values. So this section talks about that. As a calculations.
Now we're here. All right, welcome everyone to the Maitland City Council meeting of July 25th, 2022. If you would please silence your phones or other devices that might be ready to go off during the meeting. We typically open our meeting with an invocation or a moment of silence, and if you would please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. If you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first order of business tonight is special recognition. So I'm going to go to the podium and do it there.
Are we going to be on the Facebook page?
Live stream. And maybe this is a special recognition of Councilman Mike Thomas, former Councilman Mike Thomas. Please join me up here. I'd first like to say I've had the pleasure of knowing Mike for, I don't know, close to 20 years or so, and his lovely family, who we have tonight, his wife Lori and lovely daughter Zoe, and another daughter,
Florida Gator.
Right. He's a fine parent and a wonderful family. Even if they did end up in Florida, they're both his daughters. I think it's something that we can forgive them as Seminoles. But as I said, Mike has been a friend of mine for a long time, and I was also very lucky to serve with him for 6 years on the city council. We were lucky to have Mike. Mike had a stunning career in journalism where his job was to hold elected officials accountable and make them uncomfortable and make sure that everything was always performed above board. And he did a great job with that. I enjoyed his columns for years and years at the Orlando Sentinel, and I think we all did. So it was a little bit of surprise that he came over to the other side and joined the ranks of elected officials. But I think, having had a career of really investigative journalism and delving into what makes government work and what makes government good and what makes government sometimes not so good, he had a unique perspective on being an elected official with us and serving up here. It was, we didn't agree on everything all the time. In fact, we often disagreed. But he was always had the strength of the community in mind. One of his top focuses was education and keeping our schools very strong, especially Maitland Middle and Dominic Elementary and Lake Sedalia public schools, where his wife Lori is a long-time teacher. Those schools are the foundation of the neighborhoods around here, and there are other schools, Orangewood and others as well, that really make Maitland kind of a strong family community. And Mike always kept that in topmost of his mind when he was going about his business. And he was also very keen on making sure that we had lots of recreational activities, outdoor activities, the access to the outdoors and the lakes and kayaking and being around and healthy activities for families was always something he was also championed. And he was if you know Mike, you know that he's very tight with his finances, very, very exacting with his finances, I think is a polite way to say that. And he was even more so with the city's finances, so we were always in good shape whenever Mike was looking at the budget, as we're about to get ready to do here, so we can always remember Mike for leading us in that exercise. But I have a resolution on behalf of the city council, and we of course have a lovely, suitable framing resolution here, and another item for you. But if you would allow me to read this resolution, I'd appreciate it. Whereas Mike Thomas has served the citizens of Maitland, Florida with honor, loyalty, and sincere dedication as a member of the Maitland City Council for 2 terms, from April 11, 2016 until this day, well, it was at the time, April 11, 2022, including a 1-year term as Vice Mayor. And whereas Mike Thomas is also hereby commended for his outstanding service as a member of the Lakes Advisory Board and of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And whereas during his tenure, Councilman Mike Thomas has demonstrated a positive approach and commitment to achieving significant legislative goals of our city, including the adoption of an award-winning comprehensive development plan, a thoroughly revised land development code, the wetlands protection ordinance, and zoning for medical marijuana dispensaries. And whereas Councilman Mike Thomas is a passionate proponent of public improvements, including Independence Lane and the creation of Independence Square Park, improvements to Fort Maitland Park and Hillwreck Park, and the extension of sidewalks, including Tuscarora Trail and the bike pedestrian trail along Sandsburg Road, Paddler's access to Maitland Lakes, the undergrounding of power lines in Greenwood Gardens, extending central sewer to Falmouth Hills, and has championed development of a new Maitland Public Library. And whereas Councilman Thomas's thoughtful and incisive approach, honed by a career in journalism and tempered by life as a doting father and loving husband, have helped to ensure a sound and efficient government structure to create a better community as a whole. And whereas the mayor and members of the city council deem it fitting and proper to recognize Councilmember Thomas for his dedication and public service during these past years. Now therefore be it resolved that I, John P. Lowndes, and members of the city council do hereby express sincere appreciation and gratitude to Councilmember Mike Thomas for his faithful, devoted public service, and we extend our best wishes for his continued good health and prosperity in this day. Mr. Thomas, thank you. Would you like to say some words? Or?
I looked at your agenda, so I'll take it easy on you and just say thank you. And it was quite an experience, and it's great looking up here and seeing the kind of mental horsepower we have here to take on the city's issues. Some smart folks up here, so the city's obviously in very good hands. And it's just kind of sad to look over there at that end seat, and because I've sat next to Sharon for so many years, and really developed an affection for her, outside of her being city manager. She's just such a wonderful person. So anyway, I'll let you guys get on with your business. I'll raise my millage rate, get me a parking spot at Fort Maitland, and be good to go.
Wait, don't forget the tackle.
Oh, wait, was he? Can you hold them both at the same time?
Yes, you can hold on to the other hand.
Let's go on this front.
It's like a murder weapon, 2001, A Space Odyssey.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes,
Oh. All kinds of stuff here, Get my posse to carry some of this. Thanks, guys.
Don't be a stranger.
When I'm not camping, I'll sit around. This is one of the great things that we did was funnel some endowment money to these guys. And which were very instrumental in that. Congratulations.
Okay, we have one more presentation this evening, another good news story for us. We have the Chief of Communications for Orange County Public Schools, Mr. Scott Cowett, to present an update on the foundation for Orange County Schools Maitland Fund.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me here today. It is a good news story today, and former council member Thomas was certainly instrumental in helping to put it together, as well as former Mayor McDonald, who's here today. Just want to talk a little bit about and give you all an overview of the fund that was established in 2017. So on April 6, 2017, the Maitland City Council and the Foundation for Orange County Public Schools entered into an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, establishing the fund for Maitland Public Schools. The purpose of the fund is to support before and after school educational enrichment activities for students at the traditional public schools within the city limits of Maitland. That would be Domerick, Lake Sebelia, and Maitland Middle School. As mentioned, the fund was established in 2017 and was agreed that the first disbursement would be in 2018, giving the fund an opportunity to grow. The initial investment, the endowment that was put forward was $300,000 to the Foundation for Orange County Public Schools, with the understanding that any revenue generated from that would go directly back to those 3 schools. When this year's disbursement is made, the fund will have made 5 disbursements, so from 2018 to 2022, for a total of $69,761. The rundown of the money, just to give you an overview. So in 2018, it generated $8,764. In 2019, $21,997. In 2020, it generated $12,000. In 2021, it generated $19,000. And this year, we will distribute a check divided of $8,000, which the fund within the agreement, and you have the agreement before you, guarantees an $8,000 disbursement minimum dispersed to the schools based on enrollment. So each year, as I said, it is based on enrollment, proportionately distributed. Maitland Middle School gets approximately 42% of that money. Domerick Elementary gets approximately 33%, and Lake Sebelia Elementary gets about 25%, roughly. For example, and I'll tell you the disbursement this year so you know how it will be dispersed. Maitland will get $3,360. Domerick Elementary will receive $2,640, and Lake Sebelia will receive $2,000. We do have Principal Malik Brown here today from Maitland Middle School. Unfortunately, Principal Perminter from Domerick Elementary had jury duty today in Osceola County and could not join us. Principal Dobbs, John Dobbs from Lake Sebelia, has the flu, and his family is dealing with that. So I was thankful he didn't come today. But we do have Principal Brown here today from Maitland, and I'd like him to just take a couple of minutes, and he'll share how they have utilized the money at Maitland Middle School last year and what they plan on doing this year, as well as giving a little background on Domerick. I know that Principal Perminter sent him some information as well, and I know that John Dobbs had sent me some information, and I know how he is using it, and he is focusing primarily on transportation for after-school tutoring, before and after-school tutoring. So I'll let Principal Brown take over, so thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm the proud principal of Maitland Middle School, and I'm excited to be here this evening, and I thank you for your generosity for us. At Maitland this past year, we used the funds to fund our after-school program with tutoring and transportation. We focus heavily on our math program. Math has been an issue of growth at our school, and I'm excited to say that because of what we did with these funds, with our transportation and providing resources for our students, we had some significant growth with our bottom 25% students. I would say about a 10% increase in both our math and algebra scores, which is very exciting for me. Ms. Perminter sent me a list. I'm going to read it verbatim. The monies given were very helpful in supporting our before and after school tutoring program here at Domerick. This year our program supported about 60 students, some who needed ELA support, others math, and others in both subjects. Funds were used to purchase resources and materials for before and after school tutoring programs. The resources purchased included digital and paper periodicals in reading, math, and science. These materials are high interest, interactive choral readings to practice fluency across multiple genres. The materials included writing opportunities and debating opportunities. Resources included vocabulary, graphic organizers, and the digital tool allows teachers the choice to change the Lexile score, or the Lexile level. Our learning gains for the lowest quartile in ELA were 73%, and for math were 81%. The plan for this year's funds is to purchase these materials again, as well as purchase whiteboards for the teachers to monitor learning and students to show their thinking during, before, and after school tutoring. And for us at Maitland, we plan to use the funds again for the same thing for transportation. This time we're expanding it to our language arts department as well, just to get some support there to help our students grow in those areas. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, Reverend Brown. That's great. Thank you all for coming and telling us, keeping us up to date on where we are with all this. And,
Thank you all. We certainly appreciate it. I know the schools do, and it's just it's one of those great things that we can do as a partner. So thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Moving along, we are into the old business section. I should say at this point, our city manager is not with us this evening. I think he might be with us on the phone.
He's on Zoom.
On Zoom? Okay.
Yes, sir.
He's available, but he's indisposed, so we've got him when we need him. Lori, is there any old business to report?
No, sir.
Okay. Next item is consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? No. Does anybody have any public comments on consent agenda items number 2 and 3? So the public period on that. And seeing none, let's close the public period on that.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion
I'll second.
and a second. Lauren, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wurzel,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, public period. Now is the time when any member of the public is welcome to address us on any item that's not on the agenda. Anybody from the public? We see no takers. Okay, we'll close the public period. And moving into the important business of the evening, the proposed millage rate. And Mr. Regentine, are you available to introduce that item?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. In accordance with the Truth in Millage Act, the city has to calculate the rollback rate for the 2022 tax year, set the proposed operating and voted debt millage rates, and set the date, time, and place for the tentative budget hearing. Just so you know, the state statutes require those as separate motions and votes. That's why they're outlined in the requested action and motion as separate items. So you need to act on those separately. The operating millage rate used in preparation of the budget draft of 4.3453 is a little more than 11%, 11.3% higher than the rollback rate of 3.9043. A mill, as I think most of us know, is the tax rate for every $1,000 of taxable property value. At 4.3453 mils, a home with a taxable value of $300,000 will pay $1,376 in operating and debt millage to the city of Maitland. Each mill generates about $3 million to the general fund and $337,000 to the CRA. For a home with a taxable value of $300,000, each additional mill will cost the resident $300 on their 2022 tax bill. The combined total millage rate of the budget is 4.5633, which is 0.019 mils less than the prior year's combined total rate of 4.5823. There are different formulas that the state prescribes. If you want to raise the millage rate, those are outlined in my staff report. So if you have any questions on those, I'd be happy to answer them. Once the Council sets proposed millage rate, the certification of taxable value, and the maximum millage levy calculation. Preliminary disclosure has to be returned to the Orange County Property Appraiser's Office by the end of July. These forms are attached for your review. The final millage rates will be set at the final public hearing in September. That's our last meeting in September. The final millage rate could be any millage rate equal to or lower than the proposed millage rate set by the council tonight. Millage rate can be increased after the proposed millage rate is set. However, it is a long and involved and difficult process, so we certainly wouldn't recommend that. As we talked about at the first budget workshop, we are proposing to maintain current millage rate, which will fund everything that I think we wanted to get done in the next budget year. That's primarily due to the increase in property values in the city. That 11% increase made balancing the budget at current millage rate fairly easy. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mr. Riggins? Would anybody from the public like to address us on this item?
You know what I'm going to say? Dale McDonald, 108 Angela Court. As those of you that have been around a while know, I'm a big fan of taking the trim rate up just a little bit, giving yourself some wiggle room, knowing that you can always come down. So whatever it gives the council choices that otherwise the council doesn't have. And so if you would keep that in mind, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McDonald. Anybody else like to address the council this evening? Seeing none, let's close the public period. Is there any discussion on the item? So we're all square on where we are as this means and can't go any, well, we can, but it'd be difficult to go higher than we said tonight if we need to for the next month or so. But we brought a balanced budget, and so that's where we are right now. And we have 4 separate motions to get through, I think. Lori has just put this at your desk so everybody understands that each of the 4 separate motions we have to move through.
Okay, let's get the party started. I will move to set the rollback millage rate for the 2022 tax year as 3.9043.
Second.
A motion and a second. Lori, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay.
Move to set the proposed operating millage rate for the 2022 tax year at 4.3453 mils.
A motion.
I second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Lori, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay.
Move to set the proposed voted debt millage rate for the 2022 tax year at 0.2180 for a combined total of 4.5633 mils.
A motion?
Second.
And a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye.
Move to set the date, time, and place for the public hearing on the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 as Monday, September 12, 2022, 6:30 p.m. in the City Hall Council Chambers. Or to call the roll.
We're going to need a second first.
I'll second.
There, all right. Lori, would you call? Well, you heard. You heard enough.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye.
Was this your idea, Lori? Yeah. Genius, thank you.
Okay. Well, we are moving through at a fabulous clip here. We have the ordinance introduction for amending Chapter 20 Water, Sewer, and Sewage Disposal. Laura, would you read the title, and then we'll have Kim Tracy walk us through it.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 20, Water, Sewers, and Sewage Disposal, Article 1 in general, Article 2 Water, to provide for miscellaneous service charges and fees to be set by resolution, providing for conflicts, for severability, and for an effective date.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tracy, our Public Works Director, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, good evening. At your July 11th City Council meeting, Mr. Brian Mantz from GovRates was here to present you the results of the 2022 water and wastewater rate study and provided recommendations on how to meet our long-term revenue goals for the city's utility fund. The study recommended an increase of 9% the first 2 years and 6% for the following 3 years. And during the meeting, another option was discussed that would implement a 9% for the first 3 years and a 6% for the following 2 years. The City Council requested to see the difference between the two options. So the first slide shows the 99666 plan, and then the second option is the 99966. And the most notable difference is in fiscal year 27, where there is a $2.84 per month for the average user between the two proposed plans. Mr. Mantz also recommended to move towards adopting the new rates and charges through a resolution rather than by ordinance. The staff has prepared an ordinance that has removed all the specific rates and included language that all rates and miscellaneous charges shall be adopted by resolution. The connection fees for both water and sewer, though, will remain in the ordinance and also includes an automatic adjustment if our treatment fees imposed by Altamont Springs or iBridge are increased. The draft resolution includes the proposed rates, updated miscellaneous charges, and an automatic annual increase after fiscal year 27 using the ENR Construction Cost Index not to exceed 5%. The resolution would be placed on the August 8th council agenda and would be contingent on this passage of the proposed ordinance. So staff recommends that City Council introduce the ordinance this evening, implementing GovRates recommendations to amend Chapter 20 of the City Code and to set the public hearing and adoption for August 8th, 2022. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tracy. One question I have is on the 99666 versus the 99966. We're going to have to resolve that first before we move into an ordinance, right? Or is this an item that you think we need to?
This would be in the resolution because it's a rate.
Okay.
So
this is not, right.
Yes, the ordinance takes out all of the rates.
So that's not a decision we need to make?
Not this evening, no.
Okay.
I have a question. This is knowing that I'm not good with math, but I can look at numbers and I can kind of, well. So I'm looking, I have both of them in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that for the first year, I'm looking at the column that says bill for average customer, right?
Yes.
The first year, 70.84 for both. The second, so existing. Then the first 2023, 77.28 and 84.24, because of course it's going to be 9 no matter what. And then after that, if we keep it at 9, it goes 91.82, whereas the 6 would take it 89.29, so lower. Then the following year, at 6, it would be 97.33, and the other one would be 94.65, and then the final year would be 103.17 or 100.33. obviously the adoption of the 99666 appears from just looking at numbers to be a more cost-efficient plan for residents' cost, right?
Yes.
Does that actually get us where we need to be with the numbers, though?
What, I don't know. We may have to get Brian up here since he knows these numbers backwards and forwards.
For the record, Brian Mance from GovRates. Neither proposed rate plan and financial plan gets you to the optimal level that would, qualify you for the very best interest rates if you were to bond finance or something. The whole reason why the 99966 was introduced was that it does get you closer to where we would ideally want to be. And what I can tell you regarding these kinds of situations is that you do get a time value of money benefit from getting more upfront. And I've seen there was a finance director in Colorado that had a really good chart that showed the benefits of like doing a one-time increase versus phased, and the one-time increase gives you lower increases over the long term. So with the phased option, you save money for a few years, and then your rates are higher forever. So it's like I said, I think the 999 gets you closer and would provide a long-term benefit to your customers, and that's my take on it.
Thank you. That actually does answer my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a follow-up on that, Mr. Grant, just so I understand. So would that put us in a better position to actually save money down the road if we have better interest rates because we're financially more stable? I mean, is that?
Yeah, you'll have more because of the time value of money. You'll collect more funds up front that will provide a long-term benefit in terms of you'll have more cash to address your critical infrastructure issues.
But as far as interest rates, is that an important consideration for an agency that's looking at your?
Yes. They want to. They'll look at your cash position and they'll look at how your net revenues compared to your debt service to figure out your ability to repay, and obviously the more the stronger your financial metrics, the more chance you're going to have to qualify for a more favorable interest rate, which will obviously provide a benefit for your rates.
Right, that's where it kind of comes back around and serves everybody if you were looking at future lower interest rates, that's
right.
It's better for us. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Because we're not really, it'd be easier if we were trying to attain like an end goal, you could back into the math somehow, right? But we're just kind of picking a percentage. So it's almost like you could pick 9.9 and then 3 sevens in a row. You could pick, instead of, you could hybrid the two and get to a different, so it's sort of somewhat of a arbitrary. I feel like we're setting somewhat of an arbitrary number because we're not really setting a goal in which we're trying to get to, if that makes sense. I mean, because you could go to 9, you could split this up any way you want because we're not trying to hit a level each year. So you can do the 9.9, and instead of doing a blend of 9 and 6s, you could do a constant 7. So I'm not quite sure that the objective is, if what we're trying to do maybe is more consistency for the residents, I'm not sure that we're not benefited by it.
We're trying to have a reasonable phase-in plan that'll kind of get you to where you need to be without causing future rate shock or causing or higher catch-up increases in the future. But you're absolutely right. Are there many different iterations? I mean, are there different percentages that could be applied? Yeah, I mean, they're virtually unlimited possible feasible financial solutions. What we try and do is kind of come to a consensus of something that's reasonable from which to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be to back it down after you go up. It's seemingly like we're in a position of potential deficit, so the two 9% increases, but then instead of going 9 to then 6, I would think maybe, I don't know, it's just a thought of going to some more consistent number than we kept.
Like 9978, 876, and are you?
No, I'm saying like you go down to 7%. Look, at the end of the day, we're kind of getting to the same place no matter what. It's just how you get there, right? And I think it's a methodology of how you get there. And when you take a percentage of a bigger number that you're starting with, then that increases more. But I think if you went to some 7% number, that it was more consistent. The quicker we can get to a more consistent number, I would say the better. That was what we talked about last year, which is, I think, with stormwater going to a fixed 3%, just having this be sort of an automatic. My thought would be the sooner we could get to a consistent number, the better. That's just that's my thought.
Okay, anybody else? Any questions?
Because I always like to make sure I know the question being asked. My focus for today is on the motion before us, which is whether or not to amend the ordinance as suggested, which the primary change that I see throughout is to change, as Ms. Tracy said, these fees to be in a resolution, which will come before council next time. Overall, based on Mr. Mance's presentation last time, I think and the city employees' recommendation, I think it makes sense for these things to be determined by resolution. So at this point, the only other thing other than that I saw that caught my eye, and I spoke with Mr. Mance and Ms. Tracy tonight about, are the impact fees, or the connection fees, but technically impact fees, and those are incorporated, and my understanding is those have to be by ordinance, and so those are raised, and so I did ask lots of questions tonight, because I know, as I believe Mayor Lowndes brought up last time, that we do have some residents that may be especially impacted by any changes in hookup fees or impact fees. And so he explained to my satisfaction, a little bit above my intellectual grade, but to my satisfaction, the industry standards and the reasons why that is. So all of that being said, I think for the limited purpose that is here tonight, I have no other questions.
Okay.
So just to be clear, we do need some direction on when to bring back the conversation. Ordinance will come back next meeting and the resolution to set these rates. More exactly, some direction. Right.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing. See if we can get educated any further on this.
Dale McDowell, 108 Angelo Court, and most of you have heard me speak about this for, I'm going to say 10 years to be kind. This is all very predictable. We are behind the curve. I remember Brian talking about that in his presentation at the last meeting. That 40 years was the expectation of some of the physical life of these lines. I'd give up a body part if my lines in front of my house were only 40 years old. I know better. You all know better. So sooner or later, we got to go to the dentist. And this is not going to be free. It's going to cost a lot of money. But we owe it to everybody that comes behind us. We owe it to Lori and Lindsay's grandchildren, because we haven't done these things already. So while it is uncomfortable and unpleasant, and Mike, you're right, even as arbitrary as some of these numbers actually are, they're part of a vision that sooner or later we're going to actually have to spend this money. And it's never going to feel good. That's why it hasn't been done conservatively the last 20 years. Because somebody's going to be upset about it. Somebody's going to not like you on Facebook. Okay? It can't be about that. Your community stewards do the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Would anybody else like to address the council on this? Okay, seeing none, let's close the public period and bring it back up to council. And I think that, Ms. Marshall, you're right that we have a limited purpose tonight, really, which is just to introduce this ordinance on first reading.
Yes.
But for our Lori, our clerk, brings up that perhaps we should give some guidance in any case to when it comes back, because that, it's going to come back and we're going to have to make a decision next time when it's here. It's going to be live, a live issue. So, I mean, if we have any, if I think it really is the 99666 issue is really the only thing that we're kind of stuck on here. And if there's a feeling that we can, the motion could include this, I guess, but it doesn't have to. But in any case, we have some.
My thought would be to break this up, so I would make the motion to move to introduce an ordinance on first reading to amend Chapter 20, water and sewer charges, water sewers, and sewage disposal, Article 1 in general, Article 2 water, Article 3 sewers, and sewage disposal to provide for an updated water and sewer rates and setting the public hearing and adoption for August 8th, 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? No? Okay. Lori, please call the roll.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye.
And then as far as direction goes, which I think is not a vote, right, it would just be, yeah, I think my thought would just be, like I said, to go to, I understand the first two increases to 9, and then I would look at potentially bringing that to a steady level and seeing what that does. Because to me, the inconsistency of those increases is causes more potential issues than just a steady. That's just my thought.
My thought is to go with the recommendation of the expert who does this as a day job, and who has said 99966 makes the most amount of sense.
Well, I understand, Mr. Mann's, the idea of, I keep saying front loading, I'm sure that's not the proper technical term, but of being higher, in the beginning. To Councilman Wild's point, is there any disadvantage from our standpoint for that fourth year, instead of being 6, being at 7 and then going down to 5 from there, or however that works? Is there a disadvantage to being?
Well, I have to, I guess, get the calculator out and say, okay, take the $70.84 and do 1.09 times 1.09 times 1.09 times 1.07 times 1. And see what I guess the ending bill will be to see what.
I guess just because if we were, and I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding Councilman Wild, but the 999, I think I understand the best that I probably ever will, of going lower than the percentages that you've proposed here. If we make them higher to even it out, but it sounds like there's no easy answer to that.
Well, like I said, they're virtually unlimited possible feasible financial solutions, and we're just trying to come to some sort of consensus that we can move forward with. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different iterations, and we got 2 of virtually unlimited possible solutions, and we know that both of these solutions are not getting us to where we ideally would want to be financially, but the 99966 does get you closer to where you ideally would want to be as far as.
So if I could sum up, you've arrived at these with a lot of calculations that none of the rest of us have here understand, and that this is your best suggestion based on what you know about our city at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think do I consider it to be a reasonable, competitive, and affordable rate and financial plan? Yes, I do.
Just so we all know what we're talking about, this is not that complicated. This is just math. In year 20, I'm serious. in 2027, if you went, why you could do this a myriad of different ways is that in 2027, if you started 7% increases in 2025, it gets you to 103, 119, 7. So you're actually above it if you go with 7% increases starting in year 2025. So I really don't care. All I'm telling y'all is that, in my opinion, steadier increase is just easier, because I'm not sure that if something were to happen and if you actually had to raise it, when you backed it down and then you have to raise it back up, it's those inconsistencies. And John, I think you were part of when that stormwater example, when it bounced around, it kind of gave people more difficulties than if it stayed steady. That was my only thought. So I don't think Mr. Mance is actually saying, I think he's just saying eventually you want to get this thing higher because that would be in our best interest. How you get there, I think, is fairly subjective, in my opinion. But maybe I'm wrong. But again, if you went to say why I see this as sort of just a consistency for the public, is that, like I said, at the end of it, you're actually increased by 2 cents if you do it on 7%.
So you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting staff look in a resolution standpoint for and this is mine, again, there's 4 plus Vance, another person. Is there a benefit to not having this thing go from?
Is it the 9 to 6 that is
I think it's easier to have this because I think to Dale's point, I mean, there isn't a guarantee that if there's an issue, you may not have to actually increase these. If there's a potential need to go out and get a bond, then we may actually want to have this higher, because that gives to, I think it was to your point, John, that you may want a better credit rating, so you may actually adjust this to a different level because that puts us in a better rating. So my point was just consistency.
Yeah, I just did a 99777, and that's $103.11, which is a little bit less than the 99966, but it's obviously closer than the 99666. So I mean, again, virtually unlimited possibilities, and we just need to.
But I'm just asking staff to look at if there's because again, we had this stormwater discussion about 2 or 3 years ago, and part of the issue was that the rate had moved so much, and we backed it down, then we moved it back up, and then by backing it down, it actually put us in a hole. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whereas if you went consistent, it actually reduced the potential deficit. Like, I think once you start backing down on increases, then to raise increases again puts everybody in office.
Do we need to back it down to 6 at all, or can we just leave it at 9?
But we don't. Then you get to the point where you're building up something that is not. You also get to the point where it's not actually needed, and then to the city's point, like having money in a fund that you aren't necessarily utilizing is also not necessarily the best.
Well, isn't there the second part of the not second part to imply that there's only 2, but part of the resolution as well is to have this sort of built-in mechanism to consistently increase tied to some sort of market value and all of that. So it's addressing this other issue of consistent raises so that we don't have to come back here and do this all the time as well.
Right. I mean, if you don't have to, I mean, I try and put to the extent possible, I try to put municipalities on autopilot so that you don't have to see me every few years. And what I tell governing bodies is, you don't need to have a public hearing or you don't need to advertise in order to decrease rates. You're always in charge, and you can always monitor the financial position. And if, as you said, if you're seeing a buildup of cash or something, you can choose not to move forward with a project. But I know that the city is already committed to several state revolving fund loans that have coverage requirements, and you obviously want to be able to demonstrate, and we're anticipating additional debt as part of the financial plan. And so if you can have a stronger financial position, it's just going to benefit you more in the long term.
Let me ask you a question about the in the third column there, and the index adjusted already in city code, 6.8% now, and it drops to 2%.
Yeah, the 6.8% is actually, as you know, there's just inflation has been crazy. And so the Florida Public Service Commission Inflator Index that's currently in the city code increased by 6.8%. Historically, it's been more like 1.8% to 2%. And so for just, so this is assuming that it would stabilize. So that's why the 2%, but the 6.8% is just a reflection of the crazy inflation that.
Right. So the 2% could be 6.8
Could be
next year as well.
Yeah, depending
Could be.
upon.
Yeah. All right. We hope so.
I hope so too. But not even.
Okay. And so just so I understand, Mike, one of your concerns, I think, is so the last row here is 2027, and you kind of are you concerned that in 2028 we might have to go, if we go 99666, we might be at the point where we're going to have to jack it back up to 9 all of a sudden? Or?
Yeah, I just think consistency for future councils. It's consistency. I think is easier to deal with. I think we've proven that. I think that's been proven out. Had to adjust these things in the past.
Okay.
That's my only thought, and it doesn't. It's really we're getting to the same place, so it's not a huge deal. But.
How about this? Do we still have Mark on the line?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. And if you're kind of, since this is not a motion, we're not even going to head Bob, but I'm okay with the 99666. And if you also in the next 2 weeks can respond to Mike's issues, see if there's another way to kind of level that out to get to the same place with a little more consistency, I'd be for that too. So, go ahead.
I think what I need is a little more specific direction. Like Brian said, there's going to be a million different scenarios that can get it to leveled off. You have to understand what leveled off means. If you want us to do a 99777, we can certainly do that. It all gets us to the same place when it comes to funding our operations and our capital plan. We've looked out into our capital plan. We actually do a 10-year capital planning exercise when we set these to try to keep it a little more consistent. So like I think everyone said, there's no magic to this. We think this is a sound approach, but if you take a look at the fee schedule attached to this agenda item that is quite extensive, we could put together, I'd want to, we could put together 10 of those to see where the comfort level is. It'd just be a lot of work for Brian to do that. So if I can get a little more specific direction, we can certainly put together a fee schedule.
What I hear Councilman Wiles' concern would be if you were to go rather than 99966, you would favor a 99777 and then in the same place.
We're spending way too much time. I apologize.
Yeah, that gets us to the same place. So
my point is that just from going from past ones, when you make jumps, it's harder for future councils to deal with it. If you make things more consistent, it's just easier to deal with. That's just my thought. And you're essentially going in true relative terms. You're changing the numbers by what 40%, 9 to 6% is it makes the percentage increases and decreases. If you can minimize those, I think you're better off.
So what are they aiming at? What are they aiming at? They aiming at is because 7's closer to 9, you're more comfortable with that?
What I'm saying is you get to a number that is more, it's the out years or the quick, I mean, look, I advocate for making a number and just sticking with it for the next 5 years. That would be option one, in my opinion. Makes it simplest. You just go with a percentage increase and you stick with it. But I think what we're saying is, no, there's a shortfall that we need to make up quicker, so go higher, front-end load these bigger increases, and then back it down from there. I'm saying that the sooner you can back that down to a more normal, consistent increase, the better. That's my thought. But if that's not what they advise, because you're right, someone said they're the expert, you're completely right. I'm just saying from a policy perspective, I have found that the consistency is our friend.
Yeah, I mean, the very first thing that's actually presented was a 99666. And the whole reason for going a little higher was to get you closer to where you would want to be financially. And so, anything above a 99666, I mean, it's fair game. It would be helpful to get some direction from the councils so that maybe we have one resolution instead of 10 options, but that's...
Well, Mike, you're the one who raised this, you're going to have to resolve it. Is it jump between 9 and 6 with problems?
My thought is that we're doing ourselves a disservice if we think we have to back it up. And if we think that that end number is still short, I would propose going to 9s and then not going back to 6. You keep it, you go to 2 9s and then you come to another number and you keep that out for the next 3 years. So I would either go the 9 9, and if we think 6s after that is sufficient, stick with that. I would not go. But again, I'm going to defer. So I've killed this one. How long have we spent on this? I've killed it.
Yeah, just so you know, either way, funds what we're trying to do in the enterprise fund. So if you want to go 99666, that will fund what we're trying to do. All that does is get us a little bit slower to the financial state where we want to be. We can still fund everything we're planning on doing with the 99666. That's why we gave you those two options. So if you're more comfortable with that, we can bring that back as part of the resolution.
Mark, voice in the sky, there is something aside from these numbers. There's something in the resolution that establishes some sort of consistent rate going forward after this point so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, if we choose not to do another rate study in 2026, 2027 to look out for the next 5 years, there is the ENR index that we'll be using that will automatically apply for those years if we haven't done a rate study. But typically we'll start a rate study in 2026, 2027, looking out those additional 5 plus 5 years to see how our capital operating funds look to make sure we can fund them at our current rates. But either way, we'll have a recommendation on fees going forward in 2027.
Okay. I think you're going to have to go with that.
Then I will bring forward a resolution that will have a rate structure that will, unless I hear otherwise, it will increase rates 9% in 2023, 2024, and 6% from 2025 through 2027. Everybody's comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next item is Metro Plan Orlando Municipal Advisory Committee. Alternate member appointment. Laura, do you have anything?
Back on March 28th of this year, Council appointed Councilman Guthrie to serve as the MAC representative. He's still serving as the MAC representative, but he placed the late city manager Anselmo as the alternate, and we need to replace the alternate on the MAC. And we are looking to see the MAC meets once a month at 9:30 on Thursdays prior to the Metro Plan Orlando regular meeting. We were wanting to see first if there was anyone on council that wanted to serve as the alternate to Councilmember Guthrie, and if not,
Just as I don't think there's any, I think Vance is going to be eager to go to these things. I doubt there's going to be much need, but I had told this to Sharon that they meet in the building next to my building. So to the extent they meet in person. So to the extent that someone ever need, I could be an alternate to the alternate even. I mean,
That makes perfect sense since you're right there.
yeah. So that was just my only. But I don't expect Vance to. I think he's going to be.
with Councilmember Wild volunteering.
Exactly.
So acclamation?
Can we get a motion in a second?
Motion. Quick, Lori, speak. Before he changes his mind.
What is the motion?
Oh, Mike's doing it.
We actually need to do this as a motion?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, we really do?
Yeah. we can vote on it.
Motion to make Mike our alternate.
Motion and second. Lori, call it.
The assistant to the assistant.
Councilmember Horsley. True. Aye. Councilmember Hall Harrison. Aye. Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye.
Mark, thanks you very much.
Okay. Fort Maitland's parking boat ramp. Mark, would you like to introduce this for us?
I'm not going to go into the history. I think we pretty much discussed that at the last meeting on the 27th. But as we know, there were 13 boat parking spaces prior to the redesign and construction of Fort Maitland boat ramp. The new design has 12 parking spaces with 1 handicap space. At the June meeting, council requested that 1 space be dedicated for police department parking. We had that discussion with the chief following that meeting, and he said that would be beneficial to have a dedicated space for police department parking so they can get their boat, always have space to get their boat in and out when they're on patrol. So that really drops the number of spaces to 10 plus a handicap space. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight as far as how we manage those spaces. At the last meeting, we discussed 2 options. One was to designate some resident-only spaces, obviously reserved for Maitland residents. The other was to provide a metered parking option where residents would park for free and non-residents would pay a fee. Under the resident parking only option, what we talked about is that the resident parking would be limited to annual pass holders. The restricted parking would be important on weekends because during the week there's really not much demand for parking down at Fort Maitland. And the parking violation would carry a more substantial penalty. Under this option, as far as implementation, the most straightforward way would be through our annual pass purchase program. So residents who purchase the pass would get a sticker for the trailer or maybe a rear view mirror hanger for the car that would indicate they were Maitland resident. They could use one of these spaces. This would allow them to park in a resident space if available and not be ticketed. To do this, what we need to do is, first is determine the number of spaces that are going to be designated for residents. Determine the appropriate fine. I spoke with Jacob at the city attorney's office earlier today. He indicated that $100 would be the maximum fine that we could put on for violations of the parking ordinance. We'd have to revise the code to reflect the policy, and then obviously fabricate and install the signs. So we have to work with a contractor on that to get that building ASAP. The second option, which would be the metered parking option, there are literally, as I said, my staff reports, hundreds of options out there. Staff reached out to several, and these are options that are on state contract or bid competitively, so we wouldn't have to bid them separately. But there are hundreds of options out there. We reached out to several vendors, only a few were responsive in the time frames that we had. But when it boils down to it, there are 3 real options in the broader sense of the options, which are text or scan-to-pay options, where there would be a sign at each parking space and you would text a QR code or a barcode, and it would take you to a website where you would pay for the parking. Or you would, there'd be a number that you would text. That would take you to the site of purchase or to pay for the parking space. There are kiosk options, where you actually have a kiosk on there and you put your space number in and get a little tag, or it's logged into the kiosk so people know that the parking's been paid for. And the last and most, and these are the least expensive, the most expensive too, license plate reader options or secure gate access where you can actually be able to read the license plates and charge by that. That would let you distinguish between resident and non-resident also. There are other options there, but literally hundreds and hundreds of options out there. The problem we run into is the lead time. for either the license plate reader options or the kiosk systems are minimum of 2 to 3 months. So in the time frame of having a solution in place by the time the park opens, those wouldn't be an option. And there's also the cost option there where at least the vendors that got back with us, the lowest price kiosk option that we got pricing on was $15,000. So they're not inexpensive, but we did not go through a typical purchasing process here where we didn't have time to vet or check references or take a look too deeply into anything. We're just trying to get an idea of what our options were. So the text or scan to pay option do have shorter lead time. That's a several week lead time. The vendors we spoke to, like I said, the downside on those is that the vendors we spoke to did have an ability to differentiate between residents and non-residents. So that's a weakness. But if we decide to go with this option, as I've been putting thought into it over the last couple of days, I guess we could use sort of a hybrid with either the decal or mirror hangers for Maitland residents in conjunction with the text or scan pay system to give the Maitland residents the ability to park without paying. So I guess that would be the option. As I said in my staff report, we do kind of need to come to a decision tonight because it looks like either option will require a change in our code, which will require an ordinance that we would be able to put on the agenda in August, 2 meetings of August, to get everything in place. We also need to get word out. We're going to change the policy down there. We need to get the word out, but there will certainly be time to do that. As far as the legal options, Cliff has put together a memo that's attached to the staff report regarding the options we've discussed. So if you want to get into that in more detail, and I hate to put words in your mouth, but he's basically saying the options are defensible. Just one is probably going to be a little bit more easy to defend than the other, but I'll let Cliff expound on that if you're interested there. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them.
Okay, anybody have any questions of Mark? You've given us, well, as you say, there's myriad options, but of 2 main varieties. And the third one is also just to continue doing what we were doing before, which is also an option.
Oh yeah, the first come, first serve option.
Yeah. So I think there's something to be said for simplicity here because it's going to be, you know, a new operation. Things will be evolving at the boat ramp. Things are, as Mr. Wild pointed out before, sometimes things get kind of tense down there when the boats go in and out of the water. But this would add an extra layer of difficulty to that maneuver. But in any case, let's just begin the discussion to see where we want to end up on this.
So I think just on the, I know there's a thought on the meters. So I think one of the issues with the meters or anything is that, so logistically the way this works, right? So someone comes in, backs their trailer down, unloads a boat, and then goes and finds a parking space. That boat then sits on the ramp. Until that person then gets back into their boat and backs away, that person is clogging another ability to either someone to come in or go out. So when that person goes to their parking space and then let's say there's the first time there and they got to download an app, or they got to scan it and they got to pay it, it's just prolonging the amount of time that that person is actually clogging the space. So you're compounding the problem. And if someone doesn't, you know, someone has to, like I said, their phone, they got to make sure their phone, they got to scan it. I think you want to get them in and out as quickly as possible. You don't want people sitting in a boat waiting for the person to park the trailer and come back and go, in my opinion. So I don't think the meter scanning option is a good option, unless what you did is you paid them on the front end, which is a lot of places where you go, when you go in, you pay. That works fine, but we don't have a big enough operation, in my opinion, to support that. So,
Let me understand just what you're saying, because I'm trying to figure out, so you're saying a person's gonna come in, they're gonna back their boat in, they're gonna put it in the water,
yeah,
and then they're gonna drive up, and then they're gonna pull into a parking spot.
correct.
And while they're in the parking spot for like 2 minutes, paying for parking, I'm just, because I go downtown, and the first time I had to download that Park Mobile app, I scanned the QR code, it loaded it up, and I had payment done in like a minute or two. I've gone to other cities and paid for parking. I don't know if you're not familiar with how it works. I mean, I'm sure that we can probably find the easiest possible app, but are you saying that that is too long of a time? Would you rather have people?
I don't know what the average download time and user transaction time is for each of these apps. I'm saying I would have tried to avoid anything that would prolong someone having to get out of their car, scan an app, and do all that. Yes, I would say to avoid, I'm not going to debate how long it's going to take. I would say any amount of time, I would say causes the potential for friction, and I would avoid.
But they're already in the parking spot. Like they're not holding up traffic, right?
No, they are. Because you gotta get the person back in the boat to go.
What you mean is because there's a boat waiting at the ramp, you can't unload another boat?
You can't unload another boat until the boat that's in the slot is gone. And the only way that boat leaves is if the person who, and typically, I'm just saying, because the person who drives the boat is often the person, and a lot of people do it by themselves. I was one who did it. I would do the whole thing by myself, and so the boat would stay tied up to the dock until I went back in the boat and shoved it off. So you are. I talked about what I discussed
Okay,
with.
I get what you're saying now. Okay, I couldn't figure out like where the delay was, but you're saying that literally the boat is sitting there.
Waiting for the person to get back.
I think to kind of try to refocus, because last meeting, Councilwoman Hall Harrison and I we both have the picture, we use these apps all the time, but in some of my subsequent conversations with Mark and some of the things he's saying today, from a administrative standpoint, from a city standpoint, it seems like this option isn't terribly favored. And I think one thing that I kind of realized as a light bulb moment that I hadn't been thinking of before is when I'm looking at the city of Orlando or where I've used these apps before, they have specialized parking enforcement people, staff that does that, whereas here that's chief and his staff here that would become parking enforcement, and it would be kind of like a pretty arduous thing for them specifically to add onto their task. So given that, I think I've changed my position on the utility wait time side, on parking app. I think to me the best balance of administrative concerns for ease of enforcement and administrative behind the scenes stuff and giving a benefit to Maitland residents and staying within the bounds of the Constitution and trying to mitigate our risks as a city legally, that it makes sense to have some form of parking pass that is open to anybody, but that is free for Maitland residents, whether that's a sticker or decal that's issued at the time of the boat parking pass or a hang tag or whatever, that there's a financial benefit or whatever to being a Maitland resident, but that all the parking spaces that are not allotted to police or handicaps or whatever are equally open. To me, that seems like the best compromise of all of the different considerations being legal, benefit to our residents, and administrative concerns.
So I kicked this around with Mark, and so I'll toss this out, and then we can find all the flaws with it. You can tell me it's a bad idea, but the first, so I think the police boat is going to be the first slot on the, right when you come up, is that right? Is that what we're here for? Okay. So my thought is from the balance of those up to the handicap spot, we make a, and I'll call it, you can call it whatever you want, preferred parking. And we're only talking, by the way, of Saturday and Sundays and potentially holidays, but let's just It's not a problem Monday through Friday on non-holidays, right? So we have signs that say preferred parking on these days, okay? And then the last three are open to anybody. The preferred parking is essentially there's a hang tag, a sticker that you can put on your trailer, easily marked, easily identified by the police. Any Maitland resident who buys an annual pass gets that preferred parking for free. So you buy an annual pass, you get that sticker. You then charge, it's only available to non-residents who buy an annual pass. So you can only get that preferred parking if you buy an annual pass. We set that rate, obviously, at a high enough level. People can buy that annual pass, stick it up into the preferred pass that went with their annual pass, an additional fee. They can then put it on. We still have free spaces open. And that gets rid of also the fact that I talked to Mark about, okay, making it only for people who buy the annual pass, and then we'll just raise the annual pass for non-residents. The problem is you can get an annual pass from the city of Winter Park, and they would have to set their rate differently to match our annual pass fee. So if we kept our annual pass fee the same as the city of Winter Park, and then gave a free preferred parking pass to any Maitland resident who also bought an annual pass, so that's just a free incentive for a Maitland resident. And then we added a charge for a preferred parking pass for those who buy an annual pass who are not Maitland residents. We are not discriminating, but we hopefully recouping the costs for Maitland residents who are paying all these fees and incentives to make this park better. So I think we can justify the additional fee for the non-residents.
Are we saying the same thing?
So wait, the
Are we saying the same thing? You and I?
Yes.
I feel
Well, I'm expounding on it a little
The
bit.
only thing is, like, are you talking about having specific parking? The only thing I would be against for legal purposes, from based on the advice we're being given, is specific parking spots being allocated for something specific.
Well, I'm allowing for the back three to be open for people who even buy a day pass. So even day pass people, anybody can buy an annual pass, and anybody can buy a preferred parking pass with that, but we are giving it as a free incentive to anybody who also is a Maitland resident who buys it.
Okay, so a Maitland resident goes up, they buy their annual pass, they get a free preferred parking pass at the same time.
Correct.
And
At
then
the
they
same
can park,
time.
and then they can park in any one of those 7 or 8 spots.
Correct.
A non-resident who goes up and buys their annual pass then pays an additional fee to receive the preferred parking pass?
Exactly.
Okay, and how much are we setting that at?
$15,000.
No, okay, all right.
I have no idea.
No, I'm cool
Some
with
number.
that. Some number,
What happens if I don't buy a preferred parking pass? Can I ever park my boat
You
there?
get those 3 spots
You
Mike
get
is proposing.
if you're a daily pass holder. So by the way, I talked to a Maitland resident who was a boat. I think, like I said, I've used this boat ramp. I don't have a boat now, so I don't use it, and I use a Diamond boat ramp. I have, whatever. But I talked to a Maitland resident who went to Dinky Dock recently, and it was his son's birthday. Maitland ramp was closed, so he went to Dinky Dock. It's a disaster, apparently. It's even worse. I don't remember, but I guess you have to. There's only a few spots that you can even get out of, and it's 5 total. And I guess it's even difficult getting in and out of those 5. And so it was not a good experience. And so the thought is just having anything we can do that helps a Maitland resident actually access the lake is an incentive, because there's this and Dinky Dock are it.
Does the preferred pass in any way, preferred parking spots that are both open and closed, does that put us in any sort of difficulty, what Mike is describing?
If I understood what he's describing, first of all, that none of this applies during weekdays.
Yeah.
And unless the weekday happens to be holiday, like July 4th. And second, on the weekends, the thing that makes it okay, if I understood it correctly, is you have 3 that anybody can use anytime, with or without a preferred pass. And then you got the rest of them that's not for the police, that if you want to pay the money and you're not a resident, some heathen like me, to get a preferred pass, I can pay the $15,000 or whatever the number is, and then I can park there just like I'm a Maitland resident. If I'm a Maitland resident, I get that as the benefit of being a Maitland resident when I get my annual pass. So if that's what I understood, that's okay. We might have a debate about what the fee actually should be, because I wouldn't be able to pay $15,000, but we can negotiate.
14.5. So, but and the benefits and like I said, I kicked this around with Mark was then from an enforcement standpoint, you get a sticker on your trailer, you get a hang tag, it's easy to enforce, you're not coming up with a new thing. You make the fine $100, people are gonna feel it. If they really wanna park there and they wanna pay the $100, they can pay there and they can pay the $100 to have a preferred pass for the day. And it gives at least, what we're not guaranteeing that there's gonna be a preferred space available, we're just giving our residents, hopefully, the best option to be able to park and use the lake. Which I hear from a lot of people that there's not a lot of lake access, they're paying their fees, we're doing all these things, but the only people that get to enjoy the lake are the people that can afford to live on the lake. So I'm trying to figure out ways where we can at least give a Maitland resident who shows up on a Saturday morning a chance. That's it.
And I'm fully in favor of it. I think it sounds like a good idea. The only reason I liked the metering idea better is because if you get somebody who, let's say for example, we set that preferred parking pass at $100. If we were to set the day rate of parking at $25, that non-resident comes 4 times and is paid for their pass, whereas the Maitland resident every single month out of their taxes is continuing to pay for that park. So in some ways, the Maitland resident who gets the free parking pass, we're all continuing to pay for the benefit of that park, but the non-resident is not nearly subsidizing it as much as they were if they were continuing to pay on an ongoing basis with metered parking. So I like the opportunity to monetize that park, to make it not only a financial draw for us as the city to try and recoup some of the costs that we put in to make something desirable for non-residents to come and play at, but it also does give it some deterrent factor to non-residents wanting to come on a very frequent basis because, wow, at some point it's going to be really expensive to spend all their money there. So I don't know how we set, I mean, 14,000, 15,000 sounds like a joke, but at some point we have to look at what is that number that we actually would want that preferred parking pass at, because it needs to bear out that it's a reasonable amount of money for someone to put out all at once. But at the same time, I think we do need to be very conscious of the fact that that is a very expensive park, that we also, we forgave $200,000 of money that was coming to us as a grant. So we actually really do need to kind of find a way to value cost that park better than we did, because we did pay a lot for it.
Yeah, so 2 ways to address your issue is that one, you can only get the preferred pass if you buy preferred parking if you buy an annual pass.
Mm-hmm.
I went on the Winter Park website. You can buy a boat pass for the day for $6. So if you just want to go out for the day, you can do all that transaction online for $6. To buy an annual pass, even through Winter Park's website, you have to go to 3 different locations. One of which is Maitland Community Park. The other one I think is City Hall and the library. Those are the 3 options marked department. And you can, so in order to get the annual pass, you have to physically go to one of those locations. So you have to show one, that commitment, and then the annual fee is based on your boat size, whatever, and that comes up to $100 plus $200 just to even buy the annual pass. And then if you tack on $200, $300, $400, $500 to buy the preferred parking pass, that person would have to commit. That is a significant transaction, and they would have to do it in person. Whereas the day person who's coming in from wherever and wants to use the lake now can currently just do that online for $6. They can go ahead and do that, but they can only potentially get the free parking spaces. Plus, I think that gives us the incentive, because that transaction is done online, that gives that person less potentially room to complain, because if they come down and there's only the three open day spots are taken, they just don't buy the day pass online. And also there are a lot of people, because to enforce this, you have to have the whatever residents get when you buy the annual pass, you get a sticker on your boat. If you are a person who comes in and you just want to use it, you have to buy it. So police have to do 1, be on the water, and 2, want to approach you and say, hey, show me your day pass, all of which gets more difficult. So who knows how many people who are actually in that parking lot are actually purchasing either a day or an annual pass. Whereas doing this, you're not setting up any additional step. They come in, they get their annual pass, they get the option, Maitland resident gets a preferred parking, the non-resident is given the option, do you want to buy a preferred pass that gives you potentially selectability. So you're not adding more personnel, you're not adding another hurdle, you're not adding another enforcement mechanism. All you're doing is you give a sticker that puts on the trailer and a placard on their dash.
No,
So
and
to me, it
I
sets
get
up
it.
the simplest.
Well, and it does provide for the I guess, the metering of traffic or people coming in by putting up more obstacles and barriers to them actually showing up. The only difference that I think that really is there is that arguably, one, we need to find a price point where this makes sense, because my goal was for this to generate revenue.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said before, I agree. I like the idea of the monetization and kind of the ease with which people, like apparently both of us, just spend our money in parking meters. But I think it was kind of the idea of the enforcement issue and how that would work, and enforcement for our law enforcement is much easier, it sounds like, with just a pass. They can see it instead of having to check an app, and they can choose manual learn technology and things like that. But they have to constantly monitor it and all that. Also, I don't want it to get lost that to the degree we need to modify this section of the city code regarding Winter Park's residents being treated the same as ours, if anything would be proposed changes that.
But that's only to the boat passes.
It is, so I don't know to what degree it would be necessary if it's tied to the process, or if just because it's not attached to the, but I just didn't want it to be lost in case it's necessary.
My thought about I like the idea of monetizing, I like the idea of charging $25 a day for everybody getting out of there. I think that's a fair thing. I agree that it probably is more difficult administratively to do, and that's the only reason I hesitate about it. But practically what you would have to do is Chief Manuel and his police officers would have to go through, and rather than, if you do it the way Mike has suggested, you have a sticker or you have a tag, so your guys just roll through and you see it and you move on. Either you're good or you're not. You have the tag and you have it in your right space or you're not. And I've used the apps as well. They're very easy. They're a godsend in parking. I mean, it's great. But the added layer of difficulty for this would be if you wanted to have the app that said, okay, I get preference because I'm a Maitland resident, so I don't have to, I won't be $25 for me to be free. I would imagine you'd have to go ahead of time and prove that up somehow. You'd have to have an account, you'd have to go on to City Hall or to the Maitland Community Park and show them your ID or your tax bill, utility bill, your license or something like that. And so that would be the extra step. Because otherwise, I think that's the difference between just going downtown and parking, because they don't care who you are. I mean, it's like $5 on your Amex card and you're done. And all you have to have is a license plate. But this one, you have to, the administrative step, you have to go ahead and set up your account, and it just seems to me to be difficult to trace. And then the police officers would have to go and scan each one. And once you get to that position, once you've loaded it up, probably fairly routine, it wouldn't be as easy as just seeing whether they got a sticker or not. But that's my issue with that. And the other, for the preferred parking thing, is that a new twist? I haven't heard of it before.
So it's new in the sense that the twist was you can't just do it based on annual pass, because Winter Park, we couldn't charge, if we did it just annual pass, an out-of-town person could go to Winter Park and buy the annual pass, and if they set that their rate is, I'm looking at it right now, it's horsepower plus length times 75 cents.
Unless we change that.
So, but I think you wouldn't have to. You would have to. If you were a Maitland resident, you showed up at the community park, you would have it, and you could say, "Here's my horsepower on my boat," and they say, "Oh, you're a Maitland resident. Here's your parking pass."
Correct.
And if you're a Winter Park person, you showed up and you would show them your Winter Park ID, and they'd say, "You go with the parking pass." So it's not you're not discriminating against them. It's just like Maitland residents actually get parking pass with their annual pass. Winter Park, everybody else doesn't.
Correct.
Right.
So it's just a parking, like I said, you can call it a parking pass or whatever. It's just that if you just said, hey, any annual pass holder gets it, that makes it so that someone could go to Winter Park and they would pay the fee and they would get it without.
Right, so your signage at the ramp would have to be very clear. You'd have to say, number one, Maitland residents with a sticker or hanger.
No, it would just say preferred parking. It would just say preferred parking because it wouldn't say anything about Maitland resident, it would just say preferred parking.
Because you can still get that as a non-resident for a cost.
So you can, it's basically like a fast pass for Disney. Or
Correct.
It's a fast pass where if you're a Disney cast member, you don't have to pay the fee. You get a fast pass anyway.
So you'll get, and when you go down, when you would go get your annual pass as a Maitland resident, they would just hand it to you. So it's no extra step, it's just, and look, this is just because we are taking what was already a difficult, it was a commodity, it was a difficult thing to get on a Saturday or Sunday. These parking spaces were not easy to come by for a Maitland resident or anybody, and we are taking the number of available spaces probably by half. I'm not sure, Chief, how many, on the worst Saturday, how many trailers would be there? 20 plus, right?
25.
What's that?
20 to 25.
Yeah. Parked all over the place.
Oh.
I mean, it was a mess. They were parked in the ditches, they were parked. So we are taking the numbers down by half on what would have been a peak day. So you're just compounding the problem by what we did. And I completely get why we did what we did, but we're trying to alleviate the stress on.
One of the things I see with the fast pass, preferred pass thing is, once you call it $500 or whatever you're going to charge for it, for out-of-towners, I mean, if it's not physically affixed to your car permanently, you're creating a market for sharing it with all your friends, with everybody, or just eBay it. I mean, share, you make some money.
Well, one way to address that would to me to find a way, and this is something which I'm not sure whether it's doable because of the coordination with Winter Park, but if you could coordinate like if it was a hangar, the number there with the number for the boat, or a number for the boat trailer, so that you can know those two. Because you're right, if you don't, it's like a handicap pass to car park and handicap space.
Yeah, it has to be attached to the license plate.
Yeah, you
So now it has to be where these things can be matched.
Right, you put it on the trailer. So it would be twofold. It would be on the tow vehicle and on the trailer itself. Because the trailer stays in the spot. Look, it's not perfect, and it's not. I'm not.
No, I like the preferred parking pass solution. I think it makes a lot of sense. My only concern is that we have to set at a price point where we're actually going to generate some revenue off of this, because $25 per parking spot that could theoretically rotate through once or twice a day is going to generate a decent amount of money. Even if we have to offset that with costs of staff and technology and other things, we're going to make money on that. Are we going to make money on the other solution where we are charging for those passes, and are we going to get cold feet and get nervous about setting it at $500 for a preferred pass and go, gosh, that's an egregious amount of money for us to charge for that thing. Yeah, but if you're visiting, 10 times during the summer, that's basically like paying for parking. Do you know what I'm saying? Like we have to set it at a rate where we're still seeing a heavy user we're going to still be able to generate revenue off that heavy user.
Right. So to the same point, if what we did, and I'm not as familiar with these apps, so I know how to use a phone, but I'm not as familiar with these pay for parking apps. But if you were to have it where at the end of the spot you scanned it, and I don't know if there's a system where when you bought your annual pass, you then got to marks, or to, I think you said this as well, Laura, that to differentiate, or maybe John, that to differentiate the Maitland versus non-Maitland person.
Mm-hmm.
If when you bought your annual pass, if you could give that person essentially a code to say, when you go to this app, you then have free parking. Like you can scan this and you're good because you're a Maitland resident. And you give them at that point some login or some information that allowed them to bypass paying.
Right.
They just came in and clicked yes.
Right. I'm here or whatever. Yeah.
I'm here. I got my annual pass. I paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
I can then just not pay, and versus everyone else scans it and they have to pay. But
I think what Mark and I was talking about, and I think he mentioned it as well, that probably the most logical solution for that specific rub would be to have a hybrid system where you've got a hanging card or a placard or a sticker, which of course, once again, has to have the license plate number on it so that it can't be transferred and it can't be shared. But there would be an analog version for the Maitland resident because they'd be picking it up in person and keeping it and holding on to it, whereas the non-resident would be using the app to pay. Because, I mean, I think if we could find a solution that was digital for both, that would make sense, but not in the short amount of time we have to turn it around.
Yeah.
I do like the preferred parking suggestion. I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think leaving 3 spots open does also make us not look like total jerks for charging for them. But at the same time, I don't know how I'd be just, yeah.
Well, let me say this. So this is a fundamental change from what we've been doing, and I think we might be overlooking that. Fundamentally, what we're doing now is we're getting into the parking pass business,
Right.
which is, and if you're going to charge somebody, you're going to charge Cliff, it seems like a personally reasonable guy from Windermere. You're going to charge him $500 to come in, and you say, this is a preferred parking pass, and he drives in there, and week after week after week is all full. It's like, that's BS. This is not a parking pass at all. This is just you fleeced me. I mean, and so what we're doing by calling it a parking pass, when we get into the parking pass business, we're at least implying that we're giving you the space. So that's the thing we ought to think about that real hard before we do it, because it doesn't make any real sense. Up till now, we haven't ever called it a parking pass. We just had those spaces, and people come in first come, first serve. The other thing is, if there are plenty of rich people, plenty of boats people who are rich people. I mean, you can come in and if you set that at $500, and you have I don't know how many Maitland you give away free to every Maitland resident a parking pass, and then you give away for $500 another 500 parking passes to people out of town, and then what you've done is set up a race to the parking spot with the Windermere. Yeah, which is what was happening before. So you really kind of shot yourself in the foot. You're saying we're reserving this not for Maitland people, but for people who are crazy enough to pay us $500 for space.
So here's where I disagree with you. We were always in the pass business. This is not.
Never in parking business. Never in parking business.
I disagree. We were always in the pass business. We were in the boat pass business. But the only way to get your boat in the lake was to get a parking space, unless you lived on the lake. So we are effectively trying to make it such that, and where I disagree with you also, is that the person who pays for that preferred parking, you're right, they're not guaranteed a space, but the person who currently buys an annual pass, who pays $100 and something, is not guaranteed that they can ever go down to the lake and actually ever use it, because they're not guaranteed a parking space. So
you have a better shot at it. You have a far better shot at it if you're just competing with Maitland residents than with everybody competing with one.
That's exactly why we're trying to
But
make
I think
it easier.
to John's point, I mean, there's a connection there for sure, like to your point. But I think that I still don't see a reason why, back to the original point, we couldn't just have the same model, but every parking spot required a parking pass. Every boat parking spot required a parking pass besides the handicap and the police officer spot, and same exact model, you get a free one if you're a Maitland resident and you pay for it if you're not. And it wouldn't be an exorbitant amount, but that way you're always going to have somewhat of a challenge, just like Mike saying was already there with the boat passes, where you could have a boat pass and still have this frustrating experience. You paid for the boat pass and never got a parking spot, that was always there. So to some degree that would still be there, but I think Mayor Lowndes' point is very well taken, that from what is being described to me, which is all I have to go on about what this was like before, and we're reducing the spots, that there's going to be this race for it, and then having these 3 spots is not going to be that much of an advantage, both for our Maitland residents and for someone who pays a lot for it, and we would almost have to pay more for it, to Lindsay's point, to recoup money and to make it work kind of valuable, to make it so that it was still a premium. So why not just charge for all of them, unless you're Maitland resident?
And how would you charge for all?
The same way that you have to have some sort of pass, whether it's a sticker or a hanging pass to park in the spots.
Well, again, I mean, that doesn't escape when you show up at Maitland Community Park and you say, can I have the parking pass? I'll pay you for a parking pass. That doesn't happen now. That has never happened.
Right.
So you're buying a parking pass, and you say to the person as they take the pass, I'm selling you this parking pass, but it does not guarantee you parking.
Right.
So you're gonna, it creates conflict right there. I mean, it's an illusory promise, really.
The same way, but then I guess that connects to what Mike was saying, is that the boat pass was kind of the same thing. I mean, it's less.
So in the
direct.
boat pass, you say you can get on the lake, you can get on the lake. I'm not saying you can park at all. I mean, so, but now you're saying, I'm actually going to call it a parking pass. Here's your parking pass.
Yeah.
I can give you an analogy that may be foreign to everybody in this council, because I don't think anybody up here who's not named me is a hunter. But one of the things that we have long been dealing with, particularly if you're hunting in other states, is having to pay a fee for the opportunity to apply for a permit to possibly hunt in a state, a specific species at a specific time. And you're never guaranteed that you'll get drawn, and some people pay that fee for 10, 15, 20 years to get one opportunity to go out somewhere to a specific area and maybe shoot an elk or something like that. And so the hunters understand that because it's been going on for a very long time. What you're really getting at, Mayor, accurately, is you got a huge re-education curve to say, we're selling you something that's really not a parking pass. It's an opportunity to park, without which you can't park. But it doesn't guarantee you squat.
And you just paid an order amount for it.
Yeah. So it may be the word pass that is the problem.
I think it's the word parking is the problem. So we can come up for a euphemism for parking, you might be able to get it. But when you're in the parking business, I mean, you got to allow people to park. So there's another way to get at this, though. We're talking to monetization, and this is what we've already talked about it. And I think we lost sight of it, though, which is what they do in Volusia County, what they do in Cocoa Beach. You know, Dennis told us about it, and Mike told us about it in Hawaii. I mean, it's just non-residents pay a lot more for to get on the lake, and I'm all for that. I mean, I think that's where we can say, listen, if you want to bring your boat in from Windermere, it's $150 to $200 for Maitland residents, it's $400 to $600, whatever it is, for non-residents, and not get into the parking business at all. And just say, you know, this is what the pass has always been. All you're doing is changing the annual boat pass fee from $150 for non-residents to $300.
Is the legal analysis the same? Is the legal analysis the same?
The legal analysis is the same, but with one tweak, which is, I think we have an ordinance that says that we will always be the same price as Winter Park.
That's part two of the issue. So we can deal with Winter Park. We can say, listen, you guys agree, because that rate hasn't been changed in
A long time.
Yeah, and it's kind of ridiculous to leave it there. I mean, I think what we can say is, you know, ask Mark and whoever to engage during the night and say, listen, it's time to raise this thing. And we also have this other idea about non-residents, and let's see if we can make a differential fee, which is very common. Differential fees for residents and non-residents are common all over the United States. So.
If Winter Park would go for it, that would be great. But if they won't, it's a game changer, because what happens if I got a sticker from Winter Park much cheaper that says I can be on the lakes, and they don't stop me from parking. And so it's
that's what when coming into this discussion I understood it differently. So that it was the change that threw me. So my understanding coming in was, okay, let's save the 6 slots, whatever, for Maitland residents, but it's a two-step thing. It's not only are you Maitland residents, you're a Maitland resident with the sticker on, with the annual pass. So all you had to do, the only change then is when you're as a Maitland resident, you go in and you say, I want my annual boat pass, just like last year. And they say this time, oh, well, here's a little yellow triangle to put on your license plate as well. And then what the sign says when you arrive there is Maitland residents with the yellow sticker on the trailer, park here Saturday, Sunday, all day long. And then so you haven't really changed anything. You haven't started a parking fee. You haven't done anything differently. All you're doing is saying Maitland residents have a shot at those slots, first come first served on Saturday, and then we can deal separately with raising the boat fees or the lake fees for with City Winter Park. I mean it's almost a separate discussion anyway. And I think by collapsing them both into the same thing, it is the park. I mean they're distinctly different fees. Parking fee is not the lake fee we always have for the park. I mean, it's getting into a whole new game.
So what's your proposal?
To do a two-step thing. one, either just do what we were doing before, which I don't think has a lot of, I think when I sense here, there's a way, right, a mood to prefer Maitland Parkers. So the proposal would be what you have proposed, which is people from Maitland get Saturdays and Sundays free because when they get with their annual boat pass. So if you're a Maitland resident who buys an annual boat pass, you get a sticker that allows you exclusive space or exclusive first shot to the 6 spaces. Everything stays the same. Part 2 of that is to open discussions with the city of Winter Park to make the differential rate to say, resident, non-resident, it's no longer $200 for everybody in Maitland Winter Park. Or for anybody who wants an annual boat pass. I mean, let's make it differential.
So I'm all for that. I was just adding that extra layer of giving people the ability to get that pass as well, based on the potential for risk of having to get that. I'm all for it. I would much prefer that option. If that is, we can make that legit. So essentially, what I'm hearing is, you would say Saturdays and Sundays and holidays. That those first 7, I think it is, it's going to be now, whatever it is, whatever those are for Maitland residents only with the pass, and then that would be, it's not even with the pass, Maitland residents only, and when Maitland residents go buy their annual pass, they're going to get a sticker. Now,
the tricky thing is that people coming in with a boat who say, I'm a Maitland resident, and I don't even have a day pass. I would say, besides that Maitland residents, I'm here, I live in wherever, you really have to be clear on the side that you have to have that sticker on your boat when you park.
And that's why I had come up with that, whatever you want to call it, parking pass, whatever, preferred space availability. That's what I was coming up with, and that's how I got there, which was that you when you got your annual pass, you got it, and that was easy. I mean, when you buy the annual pass, you put a sticker on your boat. It used to be a circle or a triangle. You put it on your boat, so you would just get that same kind of thing, and you stick it on your trailer. To me, that's just simple. And then you get that when you buy your annual pass, and then I was only opening up the option to charge for non-residents based on the potential for being challenged if you didn't allow it to be an option for non-Maitland residents. That's why I did it. That's how I got there.
All right, but Cliff, you think we're okay?
Well,
I want to know, it's just simply yes or no.
here's the answer.
No depends.
Well, at my age, I'm judging a lawyer too. Okay, I can't go into there personally, but I'm just going to say at my age. Look, the problem is, as we pointed out, we had this case, and the question is, what can you distinguish that you can distinguish and the courts say it's okay? And cost is one of the things you can distinguish with certainty, and we justify it based on the fact that we're paying tax. And if I was the judge, the logical extension of that would be, what difference is it they pay less money because of taxes, but they still can't get access because everybody else is getting access. I can't answer that with certainty, and it's a concern, which is why we've couched it the way we have. But if you want to take a run at it, then we will take a run at it.
Well, and here's another thing to think about your option of monetizing is, let's say someone came in, didn't have the annual pass, they parked in that spot, they get fined $100 if what they want to say, or whatever the number is we come up with. If they want to say, you know what, I don't park here very much, I'll just pay the fine. And now we then monetize someone who decides they want to come for the day and they don't want to do it. They get charged $50, $100 for essentially parking in that space without having a parking pass. So essentially, Monday through Saturday and Sundays and holidays, preferred parking free if you have staff. If you don't, the sign will say $100 charge for parking here on Saturday and Sunday. And then someone comes in, they don't have the little sticker on their trailer, then the police go around and give them a ticket, $100, they then pay it. So it's not saying they can't park there, it's just going to say they're going to get a $100 ticket if they do.
How much of that comes back to the city of Maitland? That's the state capture bunch of that?
Yeah.
The city thinking you 100%.
Oh, you did?
If from the city, if it's not something like the red light cameras, which we don't have.
So I have a question, and I think we can all answer this in our heads, but if we're looking at this from a policy perspective, which we are all doing up here, is setting policy. If we are looking at this from a policy perspective that we want to monetize those spots, and I think we all can kind of have danced around at least agreeing that probably metering makes the most of sense from a policy perspective because it is the cleanest and the neatest. And it really is the implementation that is holding us all back from thinking that we should go forward with this. That I think from we are the policymakers, we should just say, this is what we want, and we give it to city manager, and we let them work out the most elegant solution that works for them. If we really, from a policy perspective, think we should be doing something else, I'm all for it, but we can't seem to come to an agreement on what that looks like. And I do have an additional concern, which I haven't brought up yet, but it came up a couple of times when Mike was talking about having the preferred parking spots, and then he said, except for the handicap spot, and that concerns me because aren't we putting ourselves in some sort of an ADA issue if we are in fact not charging a fee for an accessible spot, which would otherwise be part of the preferred parking spots? I mean, if we're charging but not charging, I can see that there would be an argument that someone would make that they were discriminated against because they weren't paying the fee.
Well, again, it depends on if you're talking specifically about the ADA fee or so for a fee for that space. It would be the same argument if it was a disabled person who was a Maitland resident paying taxes versus a Maitland, non-Maitland resident who was also disabled but not paying Maitland taxes. And so, as long as access is provided, the logic should be the same, which is you've been provided ADA access, you're just charged a fee for it because you're not from there and they are already charged for it. So there's a basis for that differential. It's the other one, which is these are Maitland spots only for these days of the week. That's potentially the issue that we would might have to look at, or at least fight about. And of course, my concern, if you want to talk about who is the likely candidate who's going after us, well, it's hard to say, but we know who it was last time. And they're not gone. They haven't shrunk in size or potency when it comes to litigation.
Okay. All right, so we're agreed then, right?
I guess the fundamental first part of the question is there support for trying to implement a parking process that would try to give Maitland residents a better chance of finding a parking space? If
Yes.
the answer is yes to that, then the question is, what are the solutions? If the enforcement of a daily pass system becomes challenging because you have to read the meter and you have to do all that, or read a license plate and sync the apps, and if the enforcement of that from the police standpoint is difficult, then I think you go to option 2, which is some sort of preferred annual pass, something that allows you to park there, right? And then the first thought was you had just annual pass parking, and that would allow anybody who bought an annual pass to park at those first waiver spaces. That issue got kind of hit because Winter Park has the ability to buy an annual pass, and we wouldn't be able to potentially, there's no incentive there, or not enough incentive. So that became the next evolution, which is the preferred, or whatever we want to call it, Gold Star, whatever it is, right? And it makes sense in some ways because it's closest to the ramp. It's whatever. So there's some basis for saying those spaces cost more, and then you make that available to not just Maitland residents, but anybody has the opportunity to buy it. You just cost more for a non-Maitland resident. To me, that bypasses a lot of the potential issues that Cliff has pointed. That's how I've got where I am. But again, I'm sure there's tons of flaws.
Well, so fundamentally, Lindsay, your initial proposal was that there would just be, we would just meter all the slots, and mainly people don't pay.
That makes every single parking spot content neutral.
Okay.
Every single spot is a metered parking spot, and if you are not paying for it, you've displayed a placard saying that you're a Maitland resident, and your fee has already been exempted.
And is the issue, Mike, from your perspective, that people just don't get a shot at a parking space, or that they're paying too much for it? So that, and I guess what I'm saying is, you know, the difference between your two approaches is, Lindsay, you're giving a bonus to Maitland residents who don't have to pay when they go park there. It doesn't necessarily give them an advantage of getting space. I mean, yours is actually giving them a space.
It's giving them a chance. Yours is essentially just a disincentive. Go find another lake to play in.
Yes.
Because it costs too much money to play in our lakes. The other system is to say, here's a better chance potentially for a Maitland resident to want to park here. Now, they may achieve the same goal. Like, people may say, those lakes aren't that great. I'm gonna go up to the door chain lake.
But I think the one major difference is that if somebody pulls up and the metered spots are all full, they haven't put any money out for that spot, and they just drive off and go somewhere else. If they pull up and they have a parking pass, a preferred pass, that they have shelled out money for, and they see all those spots are full,
You're going to hear about it.
we're going to get a different reaction from the public to that. So we're going to have to manage expectations better.
Agreed. And I'm not saying that I don't understand your all's argument, and I don't. It is completely with merit. The twist I would say is that we're already in that business, because we're selling passes to people without an assurance you're going to get out. There are lots of people, me included, who have bought annual passes who then go down to the ramp and all the spaces are full and I gotta go home.
Yeah, but comparatively, it was hard, we're making it harder regardless because of the number of spots.
That's right.
Regardless of what we do, it's gonna be harder.
We're
And then we charge under one of the models, or a couple of our models, like Mary Ellen was saying, so we made it more difficult and we made you pay for it, and then I increased outrage. Whereas in Lindsay's example, you pay to play, so to speak, you pay for what you get at least.
But those people who would be outraged are not going to be Maitland citizens, because they're going to get it for free.
Those would be outraged under the metered parking?
Under the pass part.
They would get it free, I guess, and then
The people who pay the money will be the ones outraged, but those will be the Maitland residents, to your point. So not voters, but you'll still have people come up. It's not like we haven't had people who aren't from Maitland come and yell at us before. We've had that.
Absolutely, the person who came here before. But there's also look, Monday through Friday, this is not an issue. So you are come park, and it's
Have fun.
It's first come, first serve. We are just essentially targeting the problem times for this lake.
Mike, from your perspective, is there an issue with Lindsay's sort of proposal other than like the enforcement kind of logistics?
I just think enforcement is a challenge there. I think it's a big enough hurdle that it's, and I've talked about it, Mark, I mean, maybe I mean, I heard that the enforcement side of it just makes it challenging. But I don't disagree that if you just pulled up to a meter, and if you pay to park there, and if you didn't pay, you have to have a Maitland thing on your, I think it's still a sticker on your trailer is the easiest way to differentiate that. You have a sticker on your trailer that you get when you were a Maitland resident. I do think that's and then otherwise you gotta pay. But I think that's a great idea, and I think that is the simplest. I just heard enforcement of that.
I mean, I understand enforcement can be a problem, but if we are making a few $100s on the weekends off of those spots, I don't know why we actually have to bother chief with sending out a police officer. We could have a part-time parks person who's actually monitoring those parking spots. Like, I don't see that we have to have a law enforcement officer specifically tasked with, checking parking. I feel like, honestly, with the boat traffic that we're going to have there, the fact that there's going to be kayaks walking across in front of a driveway, that there's going to be things going on in that park, that at least for the summer months and the busier times of the year, we're probably going to want to have somebody on site on the weekends anyway who kind of manages the park. And if we have a part-time parks person who's out there, why can't that be part of their duties?
I asked Mark that today. He said you have to have a sworn officer writing tickets or a community safety officer or something like that. So somebody at some, does that sound right, Chief?
Yeah, I mean, we have under state ticket. I mean, that's really a good idea. If there's a violation, that's something we can be called to take care of the citation. I just couldn't guarantee enforcement on a 12-hour shift. That zone changes, could be busy. That's my only problem with enforcement. And then throwing an extra technological thing on the officer and everything else he has going on.
But we couldn't have a parks guy go write the ticket, or at least.
That's a very good question. Sort of been asked. It is a city ticket. It's not a state ticket, so it has to be sworn in. That might be a Cliff question.
All right. Because I had the same concern. I mean, I didn't want to burden, the police department with this. I mean, I'm sure they happy to do whatever we ask them to do, but it seems like it might not end up with the enforcement they would want. Just I said, well, couldn't we just have the guy who opens up or who's down there or whatever, and just check that he's got to have too. So maybe I don't know if you're going to have ready answer.
I don't know that I have a ready one about being sworn or not sworn, but I do think that, and it's hard to know how this is going to manifest itself. I can tell you what happens in other places that are very popular where parking is a nightmare on the weekends. Ponzella comes to mind. And we have to beef up patrols in the tiny town of Ponzella, which is only 3,000 residents, because this might break up. And I could see that happening. You're going from, 15, 20 spaces now down to 10. It could happen. So whether you have to versus whether you, at least for a while, need to. Heck, again, I make a reference that probably no one else here gets but me, but I've seen fist fights at a boat ramp at 2 a.m. over duck hunting. So it's real. When you can't get a place to park, people are getting upset.
That's why, I think we're taking the fundamental issue, we've lost. We're implementing things that are creating issues, but the fundamental issue is we're reducing the amount of parking spaces from what was previously available, and we're making most people, what we really are eventually are trying to get to, I think, is not have this be a boat destination for people who are from out of town. I mean, that's eventually the goal, right? And people are going to come here from 45 minutes away who used to come here to enjoy the lakes, and if they're going to come from a long way away, have planned their day, and they get here and they realize, gosh, there's not a lot of spaces, and I got to pay for it, maybe they'll choose a different lane.
But
I think,
but at least as Chief said to me, for the first 2 months that the parks reopened, there's going to be a guaranteed person out there on shift who's going to be managing all of the concerns that Cliff has brought up, all of the concerns that you've brought up, Mike, because we know that we are creating a point of friction. So enforcement will not be difficult because we will have somebody on site. That also will give us some lead time to sort of manage and balance, like, hey, what is working here, what is not working here? And maybe in that time we find out, you know what, we can actually get a parks person out here because compliance is pretty high with people actually paying for their parking spots. Or, you know what, compliance is terrible, we have to come up with a better system because everybody's just doing whatever they want and all the police are doing is writing tickets for people who are violating. But we don't have any data at the moment, we're taking a guess. But the one thing we do know is that for the first 2 months, we are going to have enforcement out there on an ongoing basis. So whatever we come up with, we can manage that because we're already going to have staff on site to do something about it.
so I think then, and this is for the staff question, and trying to marry these up a little bit, is that every space is subject to a weekend, and we can do it weekend and weekday, we just have 2 different rates, right? So we can monetize it 100%. The weekday rate is X, the weekend rate is Y. And if you are a Maitland resident, you have to have display on your trailer, the sticker. You will not be assessed that parking charge. So you have to go, and then you'll get that sticker when you buy your either annual pass or day pass as a Maitland resident. You can get that sticker to put on your trailer, right? I think it, and then we then have a system where we just have to figure out how best to implement this, whether this is put a sign at the end of each space and you QR code it and you take a picture and pay it. And then,
Well, we learn how to figure that out.
I don't know, Chief. I don't know, Chief.
Let me jump in here for just a second. Mark's been trying to figure this out for the last couple of weeks, and as my staff report says, it's My biggest concern is that I'm not going to be able to have a metered parking solution in place by the time the park opens. We've been able to talk to 2 potential vendors for the text to or scan parking meter solutions. We don't know if they're viable because all they do is return our calls. They even said it's going to take them, it would take them several weeks to get up and running. So we are not 100% sure we could get that in place. So I don't want expectations to be so high that we can make this happen and then me not meet your expectations. Because we have very little time to do the research on the metering options.
So, Mark, okay, it would be difficult to get it up and running by day 1. But even for the other proposal, which is just to have people with an annual boat, have Maitlanders with an annual boat pass, have sole access to spaces, you probably don't have enough time people have already bought their stickers, I guess, or will we even be able to implement that?
We have all the Maitland resident contact information in our database, so we could reach out to them fairly easily.
It's just a sticker. It's just printing a vinyl sticker.
Yeah, and then just ask them if they wanted it to come in and pick it up at the community park.
Right.
And the problem with I see is that if you don't do this right away, you lose your opportunity to.
No, I completely agree.
So what about?
But we could also, on day 1, if we have the contact information for all of those Maitland residents, we could let them know they need to come and get their free pass before the park opens. And on day 1, whoever our enforcement officer is who's out there, whether it's a combination of police or parks or both, they are selling with a Venmo attached to their phone. That's how they're selling the parking passes. I mean, it's not impossible. We would just have to be flexible with, the implementation may be changing over time, but if our policy is consistent, then we're just updating our technology as it comes on board.
Right, so Chief, or whoever best to answer this, if we did this on the phone standpoint, then in order to essentially check this, anybody who's parked who doesn't have a sticker would have to we'd have to have the technology with whoever it is, whether a parks person or a police officer, to scan in the license plate to then figure out if they paid or not, right? So it's twofold. It's the technology to pay, and then it's the technology to monitor. I think is what we have to make sure we can get in place.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like I just came back from Sarasota, the park down here, your license plate, the time you paid your amount of time, and you get a receipt. And they electronically know you're there, not your tag. But that's definitely a lot of moving parts for police.
Right, because they have to then.
Yeah, they have their own little civilian parking zone.
Right, so then they have to go up and down and say, this is the car in this space, they don't have a sticker. I look on the technology side of it and match it up, which is more to it than just, which again, that's what I prefer your solution. I mean, I really do. I think it's the parking meter, whatever, pay as you go is a better. It was the hurdles of
implementation.
Well, I mean, what you could do, if you wanted to go that route, would just be to say, there's nothing tricky about it, it's going to be $25 a space. We'll leave it at that, full stop, just like anything downtown Orlando, whatever like that. The problem is, the only problem, and it's not insurmountable, is that Maitland folks wouldn't have the understanding that they get a free pass up front. You can tell them that, you can advertise that, you can say, listen, if you prove that you were there, on this X date, and you paid $25 to keep your receipt coming in, and we'll pay you back. And until we get up and running with a larger, with a better scanning technology, whatever, that way you can, and so the only difficulty is that informing Maitland residents they don't have to pay the $25 or somehow refunding them $25. But if everybody understands generally from the get-go that they're paying $25 to come in, how you change that, tweak it on down the road is not going to matter to them. It'll matter to Maitland residents when we get their money as well.
It's just the enforcement that on day 1.
It's the enforcement, yeah. But as Lindsay points out, if we're going to be having enforcement out there anyway, maybe.
No. The technology to set it up, I think, is what Mark is saying. We won't get that technology to pay it and to know who's paid on day one. So you literally have to have somebody there selling tickets Saturday mornings. And
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
What's that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that it's unlikely we'll have a automated option on day one.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. If we have somebody out there anyways, and we add a parks person, any cost that we would have output for that parks person to be there would be recouped by the fact that we are selling those parking spots.
The issue I currently have with my part-timers is I have 6 part-time positions, 3 of which are vacant right now, so we're not even covering what typically our part-timers cover at the community park and picking up garbage in the public cans and the dog stations around the city, so I'm having coverage problems because I can't fill those positions, so this would be adding essentially a 12-hour shift onto them because the park is open from 6 in the morning till 11 at night, so logistically that becomes a problem really for Jay, but for me secondarily.
Right. So I think that the other option, which is what I was saying, is that if you essentially, it's $25 to park there, and you essentially, if you're parked there and you don't have a sticker, it's a kind of the system of whether or not you can roll the dice, just like now. I mean, there are people that go on the place that don't pay the tax, they don't pay the fee, right?
Right.
So you have a thing where it costs $25 to park in the spot unless you have the sticker, right? You roll through there, and anyone who doesn't have a sticker gets a $25 ticket on their window to pay for the parking space. And they gotta go pay. Now that's a problem because you're not prepaying, right? And that's a problem because you have to go collect it. I don't know how that works. But you could do something like that, at least until you got a system up and running. I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know how you would do that. If you gave them a ticket for $25 and they never paid it, what does that do?
We send them letters, and mostly just goes to the magistrate if the city, it's a city ticket, there is no.
Right. So I mean, until you get your system in place where it would change it to pay on the QR code, at least when you got out of the gate, you could then say, you park there without a sticker, you're going to get charged $25, and it's going to come in the mail. And then at least we've got something until you can get the QR code, whatever that is in place. At least you've got a system. You roll out from day one. Parking is going to be $25 on the weekends and $10 on the weekdays, unless you're a Maitland resident who has a sticker affixed to their trailer. And then you've got that, and then how you actually record that changes, but at least your fee is set. It's just that on day one, it's going to be by ticket, and on day 33, it's going to be by QR code payment.
So just to complicate that a little further, what is, Mark, I don't know if you asked this question or got the response even from asking, but what is the administrative charge? If we're charging $25 a space, how much is the vendor taking of that?
Depends on the vendor. Every vendor has different cost structures. So
somewhere between 10 and 20, I imagine?
Again, we only talked to 2 of them. I don't have the numbers here in front of me, so I can't answer that right now.
Whereas on the first one, the other solution, which is just the preferred, you get no, it would 100% of the money would come to us. Because it's our pass system. And then the ticket, which you would give for someone who didn't park there in violation, would then also come 100% to us under the ticketing, under our city ticket.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I wondered, Chief Manuel, and can I ask, typically when you ticket somebody, what are the chances of getting paid? And if they're not a Maitland resident, it makes it even more difficult, I would imagine.
90%.
What's that?
Pretty high.
Is it?
Very seldom they don't pay.
Okay.
Because they don't know that.
There's these lawyers, though, that tell people they are strict.
Okay, so, all right.
So what do you like, Lindsay? What do you want to do?
I think that if we are all in the consensus that we think the metering is the best way to go forward, then that's what we make as a policy decision, and we leave it to the city manager to implement that however he sees fit.
But I don't know that that is, I can't answer that because we've been told that enforcement of that is challenging. And until that enforcement side is answered, I would say the other option is easier, better. Because the enforcement is, I think, I don't want to put anybody in an enforcement position that is more difficult than it has to be.
Let me give the chief manual an opportunity to speak, unless you don't want to. I don't want to bypass any of your concerns because you're the guy.
In reference to the metering and enforcement?
Yeah, this whole conversation.
I mean, I think it's a great idea, I just don't want to put that on an officer. That's his daily duty, is to control the streets of Maitland, not to be in the boat ramp all day, driving by or getting out and pulling the code. I mean, if you go to any place that has that type of parking, there's usually a attendant that takes care of that, a civilian type model. For that reason, and I'm not gonna, I'll be truthful, it's to be a morale kicker too. I want you to go write tickets. I mean, it's fine writing tickets, but that's part of your job when you work the east side, is to pull out your app and go to all the cars and stuff like that. I don't think it would look good for us either. Like I said, usually law enforcement doesn't handle that. It's usually handled by a civilian parking attendant who would write you some type of slip or ticket.
So my suggestion is on Saturdays and Sundays, because also I think Monday through Friday, this is never, I don't think we should even get into the charging business because it's never going to make us enough money to try to enforce it. So we just deal with Saturdays and Sundays. We charge a fee for Saturday and Sunday parking for anybody but Maitland residents. And then if we want to go to what you're suggesting, Lindsay, is we have a non-officer parks person. The problem with Mark's saying is that he doesn't even have a person to do that. So it compounds. I mean, we've got a staffing issue.
But if we're going to adopt this ultimately through code, it should be code enforcement officer. And the question is, do we have those people working on weekends? And I don't know the answer to that. But I'm confident, since we do code citations, that and if we do this as a code adaptation, there would be no reason so that you couldn't have a code enforcement officer to do it. The question simply is, do they work on Saturdays and Sundays? And I don't know the answer to that.
The answer is no. We have one code enforcement officer. He works during the week.
And so what we're looking for is exclusively weekends and holidays.
At time and a half. Or whatever we say.
Right. Well, so Mike, your suggestion is to go back to first, well, to allow, I mean, there's still going to be some enforcement by the police in any case, because they've got to come through and see if they've got the sticker or the hanger from their mirror and ticket them that way.
It's just on the trailer, so it's a drive up, it's on the back of the trailer, they drive in, if they don't see a sticker, that person gets a ticket. And it's the easiest, and then, like I said, some people are gonna be like, someone who drives over the speed limit, they take the chance that there is or is not gonna be, I mean, there are gonna be people who may park there who are gonna take the chance that no one's gonna drive by. But if we do drive by and it's real quick, they see if someone parked in that spot and they don't have a sticker, a code enforcement or whoever can get out and write a ticket and it's done. It's, I like I said, when in talking to Mark, that seemed to be the less enforcement issue is just that night. You have a sticker on the back, they roll, people drive up, you see a sticker, great, no sticker, ticket. Move on.
And there's going to be that, at least some of that type of enforcement in any case, because of people who are parking not in the space at all, but parking in the grass.
Right. And to your point, Lindsay, we're going to have people there on the initial opening because it's going to be confrontational. I mean, there are going to be people who are going to come down packed a pool full of beer and they're ready to go loading on Lake Maitland, and they're going to come by and realize that the spaces are now 50% of what they were. And there are going to be people who are not happy about it. So I think just saying, you come in, you get your sticker, and look, if what we're saying is, no matter what, to park there, you've got to have some form of thing, then it just makes like, there's some sort of extra sticker. It just makes that more difficult, because then everybody has to go to Maitland Community Park and buy not just a daily boat pass, also the daily sticker. And we'd have to get Winter Park, I think, on board with that too, right? I mean, let's just say we said you have to display. It just makes them, you have to go check everybody's dashboard and if they don't do it, they don't print it out ahead of time. So I think that doesn't work. I mean, I was trying to figure out a way to get your thing where you get to pay, but no matter what, it has to have some sort of technology. So I think if it's not a sticker issue, it just requires more to it. So I think, again, my thought is to have some sort of sticker program on the first 7 or 8 spaces, Saturdays and Sundays and holidays. You have to have a sticker to park in those spaces, and you get that space, as Mark said. Every annual pass holder in Maitland gets it. For the people that already have it, Mark's going to call them, staff's going to call them and say, "Come get your sticker." They're going to be happy about this. They're going to come down and get their sticker, put it on the trailer, knowing they've got a better chance of parking. And then everybody else who buys one from here on out, they get a sticker as well.
So in terms of enforcement, the 3 levels of ease or difficulty is, number 1, if we leave it the way it has been, which is that it's first come, first served, everybody comes in, needs to park there. The only people who get enforcement brought down on them is people who are parking in the grass, or people who are parking where they shouldn't. And that's the way it's always been. So if we just stick with that and go forward with that, which I don't hear a lot of enthusiasm for, but that would be my vote. The next one is to have 6 of these spaces, 7 of these spaces for Maitland residents with annual boat passes, which means that police are now enforcing not only people who are parking in the grass, but they're also enforcing it on those 7 spaces. The third level is just to meter them all, which means that the police are then monitoring not only people who are parking in the grass, plus the 7 spaces, plus the other 3 spaces. Every space is an enforcement issue. Now, none of these things are insurmountable. I mean, you can do that. I mean, you could dream up a situation where that is something you could do, and it wouldn't be the police necessarily who are enforcing, although I would imagine in a parking situation as tense as boat ramps sometimes get, it's easier to allow civilian authorities to deal with downtown parking on a surface lot than it is you might want somebody who's got a little more horsepower, as it were, down there enforcing when people are getting in fist fights on the ramp. So those are the 3 levels of enforcement. So we can pick those. And I think if we want to figure out a way to meterize them all, we can do that. Perhaps we can do it at a later date. And again, I think even this annual boat pass to Maitland residents is actually the better boon to Maitland residents, because they then have a better shot at parking. Whereas if all the meters cost the same and you're charged less, that might not matter to you if you can't get space. So I would be for the spaces that have an annual boat pass plus a Maitland resident with an annual boat pass on weekends. And before we go much further, the holidays thing may be tricky, because whose holidays? I mean, any holiday that may be difficult for people in the public to understand which are the holiday. So that's where I am. Anybody have a, sorry, I feel I've only been at this for an hour, 20 minutes.
How long?
Hour 20.
I think that although I've been on a bit of a journey emotionally, intellectually, I've arrived back at the same exact spot where I started, because I talked to Mark about all these things, and I mean, I guess I feel more strongly negatively against some things versus others, as opposed to like standing up for my position. But I think charging for everybody with a sticker, like, the low administrative kind of thing, and you get the free sticker, but like for all the spots are the same, and without the meters and all of that, you know, that's just my sort of best compromise for all the options.
Okay. Oh, now we can go to the public. Anybody from the public like to address this? Anybody have a better idea?
See if Dale's out in the lobby.
Wouldn't it be funny if someone had like a perfect solution and was sitting there the whole time?
Exactly. Close the public period. If no further discussions out there, motion be in order, we can give Mark his marching order.
You know what those are, Mark? Is it clear?
I'm waiting for that motion.
What's it? All right, I'll try. So I would make a motion that we adopt a parking pass system for, take a pause for my motion. Are we saying we have to do it for all, or are we good with?
The requested action is just direction, right, Mark? So we
Yes.
Okay, well, my directed action.
Yeah.
I think he's still asking for a motion. Whatever you want to call it. My proposal is that, and again, are we talking, do we want to do it for all of them? Or are we saying we still want to leave 3 or 4 open?
I would say we need several open.
Okay.
In fact, I think 4 or 5 for Maitland people is enough.
All right, so we have 7 under the short of the handicap space, not including the handicap space and the 3 above it. So taking out those 4, you get 7 essentially southeast of the handicap space, not to the police boat space. So those 7, I would propose, the proposal would be for a parking pass system on those 7 for Saturdays and Sundays. I think your point is valid, John, on how you would signify how you would designate holiday. So Saturday and Sunday, you have to have a sticker to park there, and if you don't, the violation for parking there is, I'm open for suggestions, some amount that we would get, that then would be charged to park in those spaces.
Not to exceed $100, that's the law.
Not to exceed $100.
$100.
So and the direction would be from Mark to come back with what that fee should be, but that the fee would then, Saturdays and Sundays, you park there, you either have a Maitland sticker or pass that gets you exempt, or you would get charged a fine that would be not to exceed $100. That'd be mine. And again, it's not perfect, and I think there's lots of different options, but that based on all the things I've heard, that's the.
So you just so I'm clear, so you need a annual boat pass and a Maitland resident, and then you're good on Saturday and Sunday for those 7 days.
All you get, when you get your boat pass, you're going to get a sticker you put on your trailer.
Right. It's a qualification for the stickers, your annual boat pass and your name.
Yeah. We're going to offend. What's interesting about this is that no one ever appreciates how much time we put into these things because we're always going to annoy.
So we wouldn't charge for the other spots.
We wouldn't charge for those 3 before, the handicap space and the 3 on the other side.
And I'm sorry, and you can pay for the reserved spot if you're not a resident?
Well, I would say yes, based on the potential that
That's right.
it would be, you would be able to get that pass, but and that would, I think, avoid some of the potential challenges. It would just knock some of those potential challenges off. Because you can still get it.
So and also a minor part of clarification, and somebody probably can read this map better than we can, but my understanding is that the 3rd space down is the handicap space. Am I wrong about that? No, it's, okay, it's four. All right, yeah. Yeah. Right. I'm sure if I had to fly on it. Okay. So I'm with you. I don't like the idea of selling a preferred parking pass to others. On the theory that it might be more defensible, but I think we've got a pretty good defense for this.
Okay, if you like it, then I'm not. If we can say on Saturdays and Sundays, you have to be a Maitland resident to park there with a Maitland resident parking sticker, I'm good with that. I just didn't, I was only adding the layer of being able to buy one to avoid but I think law has been, we're all basing this on one opinion, which that opinion went to the 50CA, right?
And the Florida Supreme Court.
One opinion's all it takes, though, unless there's a one overriding.
Yeah, under fact patterns that are potentially different, right?
Well, our fact pattern there was trying to distinguish between a Maitland resident and a non-Maitland resident when it came to things that we were saying that is the reason we did it. Pollution, how are you going to prove that? Difficulties with parking. It doesn't matter who's causing the problem, it's still a difficulty with parking. So, but what is the differentiation is that we're paying for it already as Maitland residents and they're not. So that's the differentiation.
So what if we have the differentiation, to go to John's point, what if we have no differentiation, but if you park there and you're a non-Maitland resident and you get the fine or the ticket, you can still park there, but the fee to park there, parking fee waived for Maitland residents, parking fee if you park there Saturday and Sunday for non-Maitland resident is X, and we do it by.
Yeah, again, the fee issue's that's the one I think is defensible.
Okay.
But understand, if we're just talking about parking tickets, that's regulated. It can only be up to $100. So could you charge more than $100 for someone to park there, where it'd be cheaper for them to pay the ticket? That's the point.
Right. But I'm saying, like, so to John's point, what if you called it a ticket, and someone got a ticket for parking there, and the ticket was $50? Is that a problem from a defensible standpoint, or is it?
No.
Okay.
Again, it's the way you differentiate between residents and non-residents because they pay the taxes in advance. And if you're saying if you're talking about where there's only for Maitland residents, yes, that's an issue, if that's what you're saying. But if you're saying you're ticketing non-Maitland residents who are parking illegally because they didn't get a pass or they didn't do something, that's different.
No, but what if you said you can't park there? No. So the parking fee was charged $25, $50, whatever it is.
Right.
But the parking fee is not charged if you have a pass.
That's a differentiation.
And can the fee be charged via ticket?
I wouldn't call it a ticket. I would call it a pass.
And so, but if people don't buy the pass in advance,
Then they get the ticket. So if the pass is $25 and the ticket's $100, or the pass is $50 and the ticket's $100, we're still all good.
So John, you essentially, you get a sticker on your trailer, and it gets you, if you're a Maitland resident, it's whatever. And I guess this could monetize it, to your point, is that those first are parking pass only spaces. Let's just say that. Parking pass only spaces. You can go get a parking pass from the Maitland Community Park, and it's going to cost you X amount per day, but you got to go get it at the Maitland Community Park, and you got to put it on your.
And it has to come with a huge disclaimer to John's point that it doesn't guarantee you.
That's when you start getting into parking business.
That's why I like the idea of just having the same policy for all the spots, but I've made my position clear.
And what's the position? So what do you want?
Just pretty much the same thing you're saying, Mike, except for instead of having specific spots for it, having it be all spots.
All spots for Maitland only on Saturday
You
and
need
Sunday?
a pass for all the spots, you pay for it. If you're not a Maitland resident, you don't pay for it. If you're a Maitland resident.
To get into the parking pass business.
Well, I mean, I see your point. I think it's just kind of, I think it mediates your point to a degree in the sense of I see the biggest issue being sort of like this sort of implicit promise that you get a preferred spot by paying something, and then you never being able to get a spot. So I think it's like an intermediary between, I think it's your preferred position is kind of keeping it as it is, so it's somewhere in between those, because I have, reasons I think that we should kind of go a little bit further, so to me, it just seems the easiest. But
Yeah, so I would say what we would get rid of the whole preferred, it's just parking pass only spaces, Saturdays and Sundays, and you get a parking pass if you're a Maitland City resident, and if you are not a Maitland City resident, you have to pay for it, or you get a ticket. I think that's the option. You just say parking pass only, Saturdays and Sundays. And Maitland residents get it for free. And if you're a non-Maitland resident, you have to buy an annual pass, annual boat pass, and you pay for the parking pass. And it's a parking pass only. And you can do it all spaces. Parking pass only, Monday, Saturdays and Sundays. The whole lot. Parking pass only, Saturdays and Sundays. Maitland residents get it for free. Non-Maitland residents have to buy a parking pass.
I mean, the only people who could be potentially irritated by actually having to pay for something that they didn't feel was a value would be a non-resident.
And so they would, and we are not guaranteeing parking. You just have to have a parking pass to park there Monday and Saturdays and Sundays. And you get a sticker, you put it on your thing.
And again, let me just point this out too. Depending on the lead time for implementation, there's a possibility that the technological solution would be that non-residents only can get day passes, and that way, if they showed up and there was no parking available, they haven't paid for anything yet, and if they show up and a spot is available, they get on their phone, sooner the technology will support this, and they get the pass on the spot, because they're actually going to get that which they're paying for. It's very similar. It's not the same, but it's similar. If you've been out to the Winter Garden area in the chain of lakes, the Fairmont chain, there there's a long queue line, and if you can see as you're going around, is there going to be a place for me to put this vehicle and this trailer?
Right.
And if you isn't, you just keep driving right on out. If there is, you get your boat in the water, you run around to the parking space, and after you're in the parking space, then you go to the machine, give it your debit card, put in your tag, and you get the little thing that you stick on your dash. And so I think the technology will catch up with the problem if you give it time to be implemented. And if you make the passes day passes only, you eliminate the I bought a pass a year ago and never been able to use it once.
Okay. So I would then say, for right now, we implement a system that says Saturdays and Sundays, the parking lot becomes parking pass only. Maitland residents get it for free with the speediest adoption of a system to get non-residents a parking pass as we can figure out. But until that point, we have essentially a lot that's parking pass only Saturdays and Sundays. I think that's
So that's Maitland resident only parking passes on Saturdays?
No. Parking pass. Parking pass on Saturdays and Sundays only. And we're going to figure out a way to get parking passes to non-residents. But as Cliff is saying, right now, I think that the way to do it, and I know, John, this is a problem, but until we have them at a better position, Maitland parking passes are available at Maitland Community Park, and they're only on a day basis. And we can, what is the ability to hook up a webcam that person at the community park could see whether or not how many spaces, just to give people like, hey, you come by, you're going to buy a day pass, to your point. They can say, look, there's no parking spaces available right now, or there's 2 left and there might be someone coming down there, we don't know. But I think to your point, John, is that if we said to someone, day passes, parking passes only, Saturdays and Sundays, day passes for non-residents are available at Maitland Community Park. There's no guarantee that if you buy a day pass, you're going to get a spot.
So no non-resident day passes on Saturdays.
No, you can go get it. You can go get a non-resident day pass on Saturday and Sunday, but they're only available at Maitland Community Park, and there's no guarantee that if you go buy one, you're going to get a space. But Maitland residents are going to have a sticker on the side of their trailer. They're not going to have to go to Maitland Community Park. They can just pull it.
So every space has to have a pass.
For Saturdays and Sundays.
So we've gone to level 3, DEFCON 3 on parking for Chief Manning.
I thought that was actually the lowest step. I thought I was trying to implement.
Yeah, if there's like a sticker or something, I think the hardest for them is if there's like, they have to check technology to see if there's, time left on your spot, whereas just seeing if there's a pass and eyeballing it.
What's easier?
Right.
But how are you going to get the pass? How are you going to get the pass on your, so this is no longer is it where you go in for your annual pass and they say, oh, here's the sticker with your annual pass.
You're going to get it. No.
Well,
So
that's what I was
all
saying.
Maitland residents.
Mm-hmm.
So look, I don't care if you do 7 or 10 or all of them or 7 of them. At least 7 of these. Day pass or parking pass only Saturdays and Sundays. Minimum 7. If we think we want to do all of them, that's fine too. But minimum 7, parking pass only Saturdays and Sundays. Maitland residents, when they go get their sticker for whatever, they get a parking pass. Everybody else has to pay for it.
So Maitland date.
Anybody who's a Maitland resident can get a Maitland parking pass to park in the spot. Any Maitland resident can get it to put it on their trailer.
I think my impression was simplified, and what Cliff was trying to resolve was the idea of someone paying for something which would be a non-resident example that they never got to use. And so Cliff had sort of like alternative solutions. So what if in the interim was annual pass only, you get it by going to wherever, right? It's a sticker and it's easy, and that's the case for all people, residents or not. It's just some of them pay for it and residents don't, and that's it. And then over time, what we could develop with technology would be a day pass system. So that what was hanging in the balance was just the day pass system, but we would have some sort of like tangible, workable system in the meantime.
Fine, so then the proposal would be for the first 7 spaces to have a parking pass requirement on Saturdays and Sundays for, like I said, 7 or 10, doesn't matter. For the 7 spaces, let's just say, so we leave 3 open or 4 open, but for 7 spaces or all 10, parking pass only Saturdays and Sundays. And right now, the only way you can get that parking pass is to get an annual boat pass and then pay the fee for the parking pass if you're a non-resident. Resident gets it for free.
So non-residents can have that as well. Non-residents can park there. There's a fee to buy a parking pass.
Correct. And the parking pass is going to be in addition to the annual pass. You got to buy the annual pass and then pay the fee for the parking pass. So if you're a person who wants to spend the entire day on the lake and someone's going to drive you down there, launch the boat, and they're just going to do circles around Maitland, I guess they can conceivably just buy a boat pass and never buy a parking pass. So if you want to park in Fort Maitland, you got to pay a parking pass. Fort Maitland parking pass.
Okay.
But it doesn't guarantee parking.
That doesn't guarantee parking.
But we're not calling it preferred parking to make it even seem more like some sort of.
We're just calling it a parking pass.
Right.
As Cliff said, well, just because you buy a fishing license doesn't mean you're guaranteed to catch fish.
I was thinking of Super Bowl options, but that's not really a government example, but.
Yeah, I'll just go back to the position I was at, and been throughout, which is I'm against getting in the business of selling illusory parking passes. If you want access to the lake, buy a lake access pass and take the chances. But if we're going to call it a parking pass and give non-residents the ability, I don't see where that really advantages Maitland people at all, other than to bring us in more money into our coffers. Non-residents get the same shot at all these spaces as residents do. This thing makes no sense.
A resident gets it for free, a non-resident has to pay for it.
You're right that it doesn't give them a better chance other than like the theoretical idea that, but like.
So we're doing 2 things. We're not giving them a real chance, and we're selling them illusory parking spaces.
It doesn't make them any worse off than they would be.
But what's the advantage to me if everybody else in Winter Park or Winter Garden or wherever can go buy the same pass? What's the advantage to me as a mayor?
I'm trying to avoid us having a legal challenge.
Well, I don't know. I think we're really completely wrapping ourselves around the axle on that. I mean, it's just, you know, either we go back to the simple system we've always had, which was never a problem before, except people parking in the grass, or we try to prefer Maitlanders in some reasonable way, but to sell parking passes, you know, if you went to Disney and you went to bring your family out there and say, thank you, you're going to scalp me for the extra $25 in parking, whatever ridiculous thing they charge now, and then Disney says, you're going to do that. Oh, by the way, good luck finding parking. You know,
They actually do that very thing in Disney right now. They sell you a fast, you can pay extra money to get a fast pass to help you get a better chance of getting on a ride, or you could get there and the ride length is 7 hours and you're like, I'm not going to do that. There's no guarantee. I mean, they do that very
Well, I was
thing.
thinking Boston for resident parking, you have to have a resident permit, right, during certain hours, parallel parking. Tons of people can't get spots all the time, but they still have to pay for it. I mean, whether or not we want to do that or not, is a separate issue, but certainly.
Well,
South
somebody
Beach
make a
does it.
motion, let's go.
South Beach does it too. I mean, you can only have resident parking on certain areas in South Beach.
So, Mike, you started off with a annual boat pass only motion, and now your motion really is so everybody can buy a parking pass. You want to enunciate a motion?
I know you're going to love it, so.
No, I don't have to agree with it. I just want to be able to understand it.
I'm trying to adopt one that has enough support to pass. This has been great. We haven't had one of these in a while, so this would be due for a prolonged discussion over something that probably is not going to make anybody happy. So.
I don't have to be happy either.
No, I'm talking about the residents.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not talking about us.
All right. We're all in
We're all happy.
Yeah. So you're saying, John, of the ideas you hate least, you hate which one the least? That you think
yours. It was yours. It was the annual boat pass and Maitland resident. You have first shot at all 7 spaces.
Okay.
Full stop. I mean, that's
And
Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. And if you, so we're not in, and you would get. It's the same thing, John. It's in my opinion, it's sort of the same as that. Then what you would get if you're a Maitland resident with an annual, but you would just get a sticker for your trip.
Well, how do you do first shot? Like what does that look like? Like first shot?
Well, the only Maitland residents can go to this.
Only.
Yeah, the only ones who can park there are Maitland residents.
Okay.
It's not Maitland residents plus people who've been at the rodeo from elsewhere.
Right. So I think and again, I don't want to. This is Maitland residents. So Monday or Saturdays and Sundays, first 7 spaces, Maitland annual boat pass holders. And if you're not, you get charged a fee of tax.
Because they bought boat pass, it was not for Maitland residents, it was 4 of those 7 said empty all weekend. How do we handle that?
No. So I think I think here's what I'm saying. I'm fine with. I was only doing the boat pass, the parking pass thing, not to avoid the whatever. But what if we said Saturdays and Sundays, Maitland resident parking, all others to have a subject to whatever fee, whatever it is. And if you park there without a Maitland annual sticker, you're going to get tagged for X fee.
I don't need to elaborate. I won't support that though.
You won't?
No, this is a legal issue. I won't. But
Well, it depends. It doesn't until it gets to that part about someone can do it who's not. From a technological standpoint, the lowest form of technology that I've seen that actually works, but again, it will require someone to police it until we can get the technology to catch up and make it automatic. And that is, and you may have seen these, we have one in national parks where there is literally physical envelopes and pens, and you have to fill out physically on the envelope your tag number for your boat or your trailer or whatever, and you take off the bottom part of the envelope, and that's your pass, and in that envelope goes whatever the required fee is, and it goes in the drop box, and that's the way it is. And if a Maitland police officer, code enforcement officer, whatever, doesn't see that pass on that spot, one of those 7 spots, then it's not paid for. And if it's a Maitland resident, he or she looks at, do they have the little sticker on their tag or whatever that indicates that they don't have to do it. So they don't need the thing up there. So technologically speaking, that's the low-tech way to do it. It's an honor system, but it does work because the threat of being ticketed for not putting your fee in the month. If you just rip off the part of the envelope and put it in the thing, fill it out, and they don't find the matching money in the barrel, you're going to have a problem. So, and that's a temporary solution until you can get the technology that will actually do that, where you can do it with an app and there's a kiosk and a whole business, if you want to go that route. What makes that legally supportable is because someone can get a day pass for those spots, pay whatever the fee is you determine that it should be, and if they don't, they put the thing up, that's going to be a parking ticket for them. If you say, no, we're just going to take our chances, that's fine. Make it Maitland residents only. Anybody who parks here who's not a Maitland resident will be subject to get a ticket or even a tow. Then, there will be a challenge, I'm guessing. I don't know how it'll turn out, but, we've provided you what the law appears to be.
So what, if you said Saturdays and Sundays, Maitland annual bill pass holders only, all others, fine or fee? I guess that's what we're, maybe debating.
If you would call the fee, they're subject to a fine. If they didn't pay the fee, they would be subject to a fine.
It's gotta be a fee, yeah.
So we call it a fee, and then essentially for the first go around, the only way we can, and John, this is where I think I lose you, is that in order to get the pass to park there, they'd have to go to Maitland Community Park for right now. Otherwise, when we get it in the future, they'll pull in and they'll pay for it, and they'll only pay for it once they get it.
Right. That's the solution for the problem, at least part of the problem that the mayor is seeing, which is we're selling them something that's illusory, and we know it right now as we're sitting here talking, because they're going to be only X number of spaces, and we got, on the weekend, hundreds of boats coming through, you're looking for a spot, there's going to be one. For us, or for our residents, or anybody else's. Because even if we had all 7 spaces with Maitland residents, how many residents we got here now? What, 19, 20,000? So,
22.
If they pull in and pay for it, how is that different than the metering discussion?
it's only the technology's not ready for us to have leadership.
He's talking about.
No, I know, but the solution we're talking, you're right. You're saying at the end, we'll end up with, they pull in and pay for it. Then we're in exactly the same point
Right.
as the metering solution. We've just wound ourselves into a pretzel to get there. Because we're still gonna have enforcement where someone's gonna have to check and see. And we're still gonna have fines for people who didn't actually pay. We're gonna have to get ticketed. So we're back in the exact same place. I'm just, I don't care one way or the other anymore because it's 9 o'clock at 9:30 now. Yes.
Well, everyone hates my ideas, so if you've got a better one, I'm open. I'm morphing ideas around what you all are telling me, and then I morph it and then still don't like it. So, John wants, no, I think, John, what you're saying is you prefer to leave status quo.
Mm-hmm.
First come, first serve.
That's my first choice,
Okay.
but I can.
So that's John's choice number one. I think there's potentially a solution where we said that Saturdays and Sundays, Maitland annual boat pass holders get it for free. All others have to pay a certain amount. And whether that is done right now, the problem is how do we collect it? How do we monitor it and collect it? I think the easiest thing is, for right now, you go to Maitland Community Park and you buy a day pass, and it's orange, and it says the date on it and whatever.
Well, let me make a suggestion that might unwrap us a little bit from around the axle, and that is if the request on the agenda was for direction, the direction could be, this is what we want, figure out how to implement it. That could be the direction.
Well, that would have been good about, 2 hours.
But that's what I said an hour and a half ago, which was, here's our policy, you figure how to implement it.
So, okay, so then I'll simplify it as much as I can to hopefully get what I need. I need 3, right? Because even if I get, It's two timber ties. So the proposal would be to have Saturdays and Sundays, we have a charge for parking that is waived for Maitland annual boat pass holders. And would request staff to find the best way on a both immediate and then long-term basis to charge and enforce that fee collection for Saturdays and Sundays. And again,
But is it specific to the person, you're talking specific to the person, not specific to the spots? Because that's where we get
I don't
into
care.
trouble under the law.
I don't, either way, whether or not you get that person to pay for it, no, it's per the spot, but it's whether or not that person pays for the opportunity to get that spot ahead of time, or they pay for, I mean, look, there's tons of examples of this. I mean, there are places where Disney closes their parks. When you buy an annual pass, that doesn't mean they're going to always admit you, right? There are times in which you can show up somewhere that you prepaid that you can't get in. I have a golf membership and I get a tee time. That doesn't guarantee me a tee time at 12 noon on every day. So something where we say either, and Lindsay, I'm fine if we can find a way where the person pays for the spot on Saturdays and Sundays. We think for at least the first 2 weeks, we can find somebody who can be there selling parking passes if you're not an annual resident, annual boat holder, fine.
And I think it's a much better way to do it than be selling parking passes up front for a specific amount of money. I like the idea of if you're there on the spot and there's an open spot, and you get charged for it, but to be pre-sold parking pass that is not really a parking pass is a great idea.
Okay, and so I lose John on that if you buy this thing, but it's illusory. My only counter to that is that it's illusory to get on the lake in the first place because there's just not good access. So you buy an annual pass, you're not guaranteed to get on it anyway. So unless you live on it, which then you don't need a parking space. So,
okay, so that's good. So do we have?
No. Okay. So the clarification is, we want Saturdays and Sundays, annual Maitland pass holders free of charge. Other than that, we have Saturdays and Sundays, there will be a collection of a fee to park in the space. We would be charged on
Two non-residents, full stop.
2 non-residents. And then, Mark, your issue is, how are we going to do this on day 1? Well, he's saying he can't. He's saying this won't be ready.
I'm going to try to figure it out. I need to figure out what the direction is, so I don't, because I have to figure this out by the next meeting to get the ordinance in place. That's the challenge I have. So I don't want to bring an ordinance back to you that you don't like, and then we miss the opening of the park. That's, sort of the concern I have.
And just to clarify, on the non-resident, is it for pass holders and day pass holders?
No, so we're getting rid of that. So I've lost everybody on the, so it's essentially, will you have to say it one more time? Ask your question one more time.
Okay, so you've reiterated that for Saturdays and Sundays, parking will be waived for Maitland residents that are annual pass holders.
Correct.
The question I have is non-resident annual pass holders and day pass holders will pay on-site until we get another system in place?
Correct.
We're not Maitland residents yet.
They're going to pay. They're going to pay. We just have to figure out how they're going to pay. And they're going to pay per space.
Okay, so for Maitland annual pass holders, Saturdays and Sundays, first 7 spaces or all spaces? First 7?
I think what we're saying is all spaces are going to be charged a fee to park on Saturdays and Sundays unless you're a Maitland boat pass holder.
Annual pass holder. That'll have your tag, your sticker, whatever we decide to do there.
Right.
And if you don't, then we can, then obviously there's going to be $100. If you don't pay, then we can go with the low-tech method in the interim to pay for the parking with a $100 fine over their head, while we develop a long-term solution that would be a metered space. Is that what you ultimately want to get to?
I think we're looking at either a metered or QR coded space.
Okay, yeah, that's what I meant, yeah, just one of those options, a more technological option. I think that's doable. I think that's actually, I think that's easily doable, unless I'm just misunderstanding something. So, let me repeat one more time. Weekends, all spots in the parking lot are for Maitland annual pass holders, with their tags that they'll issue to them. We'll set up a fee for parking, which we'll need to determine. I can bring that back to the ordinance. If you get an idea, is there going to be a $25 a day, $25 space, or $5 space, just in the scale of magnitude?
Was that a question?
25?
I would
Yeah, 25?
I would err towards the larger number.
25 then, start with that, and we can have that discussion and up the parking fine to $100 for illegal parking, so you have that million over their head. I think what we do is that we end up here with the envelope option that Cliff's talking about, short term, while we research because this will give us the time we need to research a more elegant solution in terms of a QR code or a text-to-park code.
So we're functionally back to Lindsay's proposal. So the only advantage to
Yeah,
Maitland
with
residents.
the time I need to get that done.
So the only advantage to Maitland residents is they don't get charged.
Yes.
If they find space, they don't have to pay for it.
But that's John, because you don't, again, we don't want to have the pay ahead of time, which I think there would be a benefit to Maitland residents if you had to pay the pass ahead of time, because then you would be disincentivizing people to pay for that, and so there'd be less people out there who would potentially park. But you didn't want to pay for the.
But you are charging non-resident annual pass holders ahead of time because you want them to pay the $25.
No, you're not
No,
paying.
no, no, not ahead of time, that's on the
They're-
spot.
once they
they're
get in the
parking on
spot.
That's
They know
John's
there's a
point.
spot.
So the way, and again,
So if they pull in and there's a space, they pay for it. If they don't, they
Correct.
That's
correct. But John is right. We have not created incentive. We haven't created a potential for more availability for Maitland residents, which is what
We do.
which is what I was trying to do at first, but nobody liked it. Which I get.
No, I
It's something-
liked it, I thought it made sense, but the implementation of it gets into the weeds. I think you can have just as much of a deterrent factor as the cost. You know, if someone goes, well, I'm not paying $25 to park there, I will go somewhere else, that has the same effect. The Maitland resident goes, well, you know what, it doesn't cost me anything, I'll come and try, and if I don't get a spot, maybe I'll come back later.
The implementation is actually the easiest, I think, under what Mr. Ryan was saying, because you just get a sticker, you put it on the back, and you have to be a parking pass holder to park there. John just didn't like it, and I get it. I'm not discounting any of these arguments because none of this is great. But John's point was that if you sell that pass to somebody who's a
Right.
non-resident,
Oh, yeah.
and they show up, they pay $250 for this pass, they show up, there's no parking, they're going to be annoyed. They're
Yes.
going to say, you just charged me $250 for.
And I totally agree with that.
Now, the counter to that is that you'd say, look, you're not guaranteed anything.
But I don't want to.
Maybe that would disincentivize someone from buying that pass, which would in turn give a better likelihood that a Maitland resident actually finds a parking space.
But we do have a motion, right?
Direction.
Well, I think that if we get the motion through.
It's a motion for direction.
Yes,
And
we
it
do
hasn't
need
been
a
seconded
decision.
yet, but I understand it.
Okay. So
Who made the
that's motion.
You did.
I did?
Yep.
Awesome. What did I say?
No, don't repeat it. Second.
Okay.
No, I think,
So that was,
for Mark's benefit, I think, Mark, where we're at is Saturdays and Sundays.
I haven't written down.
Got it, we got it.
Good.
yeah, I actually got
Sorry,
it.
Paul.
Wait,
I thought you said you didn't get it.
No,
All right,
no.
call roll, listen to the tape later.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. All right. Mr. City Attorney, have any reports?
I have none.
Mark?
No, sir.
Okay, City Clerk?
Reminder, next Monday, the 1st, is our third budget workshop at 5:30. prior to the workshop if you are seeking assistance with changing and updating your password email. Come about 15 minutes early. We'll have someone here from IT.
Okay. Great. You ready? Y'all have about enough?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I'm sorry, I do, and I'm annoyed by myself that I have to actually take more of our time on this, but I do have an issue, and I do want to bring it up to council. It's something I want to put on the agenda for the next meeting. There is, all of us are familiar with the piece of land that is over behind the Publix, which is next to the retention pond. That was Mr. Jensen's property. He came before us wanting to put a gym on that property. Dan did a presentation with him on that issue. Since Mr. Jensen has purchased the property, he has undergone a series of tests for soil and engineering to try and find a way to build what it was he wanted to build on it. He even came back to us with a second request to increase the elevation because he was going to have to go deeper into the ground in order to be able to build on it. Since then, he's determined the infeasibility of that project, and he is now looking for a purchaser for that property to buy it, and so that he can move on. When Sharon and I had discussions on this property several months ago, we both had ideas about what we could do with it. Sharon went out and walked the property with Jay, and they had conversations about the feasibility of turning it into a park, given that we do have a lift station right there on the corner of the property, and it is right as a green space that currently the residents across the street were using as a dog park. It is an open green space that really is basically unbuildable. So unfortunately, since Sharon's passing, the last conversations that she had had were with Mr. Jensen about making solicitations for an offer if he did choose to sell the property, that the city would be interested in it. We are at the point where Mr. Jensen is interested in selling the property to us, and I would like it on the agenda for the next meeting so we can have a conversation as council about purchasing that property, please.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Mike, anything? No reports? Okay. We're done.